Hello everyone, my name is Vivi. I am the Head of Sustainability for Unilever North America. To Larry and all the organizers, thank you so much for inviting us to this event. We're always thrilled to be part of university, academia, and other type of networks, as we strongly believe in a multi-stakeholder model to really achieve change and sustainable development. A little bit about Unilever. Hopefully you know most of our iconic brands like Dove, Ben & Jerry's, Seven Generation. Our company is rooted in the values of purpose and sustainability. This is not a journey that we have started a couple of years ago. We've been on the mission for a very long time. And quite recently, we celebrated the anniversary of our Sustainable Living Plan, which has been a quite ambitious journey in the last few years, and we're gearing up for the next phase of that. But if I may just touch point on, one of the topics that I know you are discussing in this conference around the current disruption, COVID, human rights, systemic challenges that we are facing as a society, not just in this country, but quite frankly around the world. It's a humanity problem. What is the role of business within all of this, the role of brands, and what happens really with other big topics that are also pressing and risking our society and the environment, such as climate change and waste. I only have a few minutes, but I would like to take you through some thoughts that I hope will be useful for the discussion and for the debate. And even though I cannot be there with you, and I hope soon in a few months or next year we can be there, I want to make sure that my email and contact information is available for those who would like to follow up. And I encourage you to visit also our webpage for more details if you would like to learn more. The current situation, not just on COVID, but human rights, I think it has made us reflect and understand the power of the individual. By that, I mean the power of one person staying home to prevent spread of a disease, one person wearing a mask to protect others and themselves, the power of one individual choosing a brand and a product that is more sustainable than others and therefore voting with their wallets, the power of the individual standing up for what that is important for them, and also judging companies and brands for doing the right or the wrong thing. So there is a very strong change in consumer and citizen sentiment that I hope it's going to disrupt massively the role of many companies. For some of us, we are in that journey, and we have very strong programs and networks internally and externally to address these very important challenges. Quite recently this week, we did a major announcement on climate action that includes a climate and nature fund of over $1 billion and very bold commitments of zero emissions to all of our products by 2039. So that's just one of the examples of very, very strong commitments that we have. Very similar targets we have with waste in plastics and in food. But what is important, and I would like to highlight, is that our approach is not to prevent things to address the issues itself, but to prevent them in the first place. We believe in a more circular economy and regenerative approach where the citizens and society are front and center of that. That's why we are integrating in a much deeper way our sustainability initiatives with our core corporate strategy, because it should not be independent. This is not a Friday afternoon thing that we do. This is the way we do business across all of our value chain. For us, partnerships, as I mentioned before, the multi-stakeholder model is incredibly important for innovation, to keep us grounded. All of the things that we've been doing in the past few years have been in partnerships with NGOs, social enterprises, governments, academia. I personally love to work with universities. Quite recently, we did a very good project with Berkeley students, and we need our stakeholders and our partners to keep us grounded and to help us in the direction of all of this. So that's why I'm quite excited about this event, because we want to make sure that students around the world, regardless of their role, understand that sustainability is embedded in any activity we do. If we want to really achieve the Sustainable Development Goals of the United Nations, we all have to work together in this. It's quite brief. I only have a few, I think my brief was 5-minute video and I'm a little bit over that. But I hope you have a very productive event. I hope we meet soon. And please rest assured that Unilever is very much committed not just to sustainability, but to working together to make sure that we hire the right talent from most of your universities to help us on the journey. Please stay safe and be well. Bye-bye.
All right, well, hello and welcome to our first ever Pac-12 Team Green virtual event series. We're thrilled to have you with us today. My name is Mike Yam, host of the Pac-12 Networks and also your host for the series today. Now, I know I'm pumped for the conversations that we have for you. If you tuned in right on time, you had a chance to see the short welcome video from our partner. So once again, thank you to Unilever for supporting as the presenting sponsor of today's virtual series. Now, we originally conceptualized this event in the wake of the COVID-19 pandemic, and I know we all wish we could be together. Believe me, I would love nothing more than that instead of being in my living room. But we're going virtual, and it's actually given us an opportunity to reach a larger audience, which is sort of big time. Now, since the COVID pandemic started to take shape in our country, the conversations we're going to have today are really more relevant than ever. And we have an opportunity to use the global shared experience to inform a more just and sustainable world. Now, today's focus on environmental and social justice issues can illuminate a way forward with responsible action, show us how we can work together on global issues that are facing humanity. We've got climate change, the hunger, homelessness, and obviously racism. So thank you again for being here. We'll begin with a couple housekeeping announcements for everyone before we get into today's lineup. Now, if this is your first Zoom webinar, different from a regular Zoom session, you might be wondering if people can see you and hear you as an audience member. The answer, no. As an attendee, you're automatically muted and your camera is going to be turned off. Now, you will have plenty of opportunities to talk to fellow attendees or panelists in the chat, bottom right of your screen. You can ask questions via the Q&A function. In fact, we actually really want that. So you can select who you'd like to chat with, either all the attendees or just the panelists, just to say what's up. Now, I'd also like to introduce something special about this morning's segment. During my interview with ASU head coach Herm, which we're going to get to in just a couple minutes here, we're actually going to have a graphic artist from Image Think synthesizing key ideas and complex concepts into an engaging, digestible picture. You're actually going to be able to see those graphic illustrations come together in real time, which will be available for viewing and shared with you after the event today, so you can highlight the conversation and some of those key takeaways that we discussed. Now, the face behind the drawings is Sasha, who's going to be our illustrator for today, and I want to cue Sasha to give a quick little wave. Yeah, there we go. All right, what's up, Sasha?
Hi, everyone. Happy to be here.
And believe me, Sasha, extremely talented. So you're definitely not going to want to miss some of those illustrations. Once again, will be on that screen. So Sasha, thanks again, and get ready to get busy here. We will be recording the sessions today for you to see on demand in the future. And there's going to be 3 sessions today. A special reception this evening also with Bill Walton and a couple of his buddies. We hope you can tune in because Bill's usually pretty entertaining. And your schedule, I get it. You're at home, you're working from home, you got the kids in the background screaming and doing all those types of things. And maybe you're even trying to help them with that math homework, but there's plenty of great content. You don't want to miss it. And I'm not just saying it because I moderated all of these interviews. All right, maybe that's a small part of the reason, but you can use the same link throughout the day to log in and log out. And you may notice that some of these conversations have been pre-recorded. We're going to be back on your screens, though, live after every session with an opportunity for Q&A with you. So please don't hesitate to continue to interact with us. And finally, we encourage you to engage with us about your experience on social media today. Just use that hashtag Pac12TeamGreen. Now, we're going to kick it off with a brief welcome message from Larry Scott, who is the commissioner of the Pac-12 Conference.
Welcome, everyone, and thank you to our friends from Unilever for kicking things off, and also thank you to Footprint and Ripple for showing your support of this series. While I'm delighted we can all convene here today virtually, and I hope everyone is staying safe during these trying times, we also look forward to our next opportunity to meet in person for the Pac-12 Sustainability Conference, which, as I'm sure you're aware, was previously scheduled for today at the University of Utah. We hope to share more information soon on when that next in-person event might be. However, as many of us do continue to work remotely from home, we're thrilled you could join us, and even more excited to have what I'm told is now a record audience for one of our Pac-12 Team Green events. The title of today's series is Lessons Learned from COVID-19. And while our discussions will certainly include those around environmental sustainability, as events around our country over the past few weeks continue to demonstrate, since the horrific killings of Ahmaud Arbery, Breonna Taylor, and George Floyd, amongst others, discussions around social sustainability and social injustices are also of paramount importance. For that, we're honored to have such a diverse group of individuals help lead us in these conversations today, including current and former Pac-12 student athletes, a current Pac-12 head football coach, a parent of a former Pac-12 student athlete, and a current professor from one of our universities. Also, a big thank you to our Pac-12 Network's Mike Yam for again hosting this event, and to our own Pac-12 legend Bill Walton and his group of friends for today's closing reception. And of course, most of all, thank you to the many university representatives and members of our Pac-12 Team Green for continuing to grow this platform. As this initiative began several years ago with our Pac-12 Zero Waste Challenge, it's amazing to see where the platform is today and to look back on that evolution that has led to our Pac-12 Team Green. 3 years ago, we began these efforts with our first sustainability conference at Sacramento's Golden One Center, establishing this annual event. 2 years ago, at our sustainability conference at Folsom Field in Boulder, we officially launched Pac-12 Team Green as a platform to promote the efforts taking place on and around our universities. A year ago, at our event at the University of Washington, we expanded the platform with the launch of Team Green Champions, an ambassador program designed to offer influential figures an organized space to help us promote sustainability. And we're excited for that program to continue to grow as we've added new members in the past year. And in the past several months, we're thrilled to add new partners to our Pac-12 Team Green efforts, including Unilever, Footprint, and Ripple, who are sponsoring today's events. Eco Products, who is the presenting sponsor of this year's Zero Waste Challenges, and of course, our continued collaboration with existing partners from Copia to our founding sustainability partner with Unify and Reprieve. Of course, this evolution of Pac-12 Team Green is most evident by the continued actions and focus on sustainability by our universities. From USC recently installing solar panels at the Galen Center, to the Cal Zero Waste team winning its 4th straight Zero Waste Challenge, to the continued charge of Ralphie's Green Stampede in Boulder, we're proud to help amplify and promote the tremendous work taking place on and around our campuses. Finally, before I turn it over to Mike and Coach Herm Edwards for our first discussion, I'd like to also, on behalf of everyone here at the Pac-12 and Pac-12 Team Green, thank you all for being with us today. Your continued support of these events further demonstrates what our Pac-12 Team Green hopes to achieve: engaging students, alumni, fans, and communities in sustainability-related actions at home, work, and play. We hope you enjoyed this series and today's discussions, and hope you'll continue to be with us for future events, where you can always find information on pac-12.com/teamgreen. And we also encourage everyone to share throughout today and all year on our social media by using hashtag Pac12TeamGreen. And now I'd like to turn to Mike and Coach Edwards. Thank you.
All right, Larry, thanks so much for the introduction, and I am excited to get to this next segment. It's Team with a capital T is the title, with head coach at ASU, Herm Edwards. Now, when I posted on my social accounts that we're going to have this conversation, I can't even begin to tell you the amount of people from the NFL, college football, and other broadcasters who reached out being jealous that I got to spend as much time with Coach. Believe me, he is one of the most genuine and engaging people I have had the privilege of working with. Herm and I sat down last week to have this talk. Well, Coach, you have such a unique perspective, I think, on racism, leadership, love of country, because your dad obviously was military, and a really special understanding of how sports can be used as a vehicle for change. So I want to rewind, go back into that time machine way back when you were a kid. What were the conversations actually like with your dad about racism and society?
Well, that was one of the reasons my father joined the service. He lived in Tupelo, Mississippi. And you can imagine his upbringing and what he went through as far as segregation was part of America's culture at that point in time. And he felt like if he served the military and served America, that it would be better for his family. And obviously that was his mindset. He joined the Army at a young age, right out of high school, probably didn't even finish high school, served for 22 years, became a master sergeant, fought in the Korean War and World War II. With that being said, married my mom in Germany, and then they came to the United States, and I was born in Fort Monmouth, New Jersey, and then from there we got transferred back to Germany, where my sister was born, and this was kind of interesting. So I was born in '54 in Fort Monmouth. Went to Germany probably when I was about 2, so that was '56. Probably 2 more years, '58. So right around '58. When they were getting ready to transfer him, he couldn't go to the South because at that point in time in 1958, interracial marriage, couples were not really wanted in the South, even though he served in the military and served in World War II and the Korean War. So we came to the West Coast. And this is where, if you look at the West Coast back in the 60s, there were a lot of interracial marriage couples that lived on the West Coast, whether they're in the Army, the Navy, whatever it may be, but it was kind of a West Coast. And where I grew up in this little melting pot, there was an Army base out here, Fort Ord, no longer an Army base. They actually converted it to a college, but was on the Army base for a little while. And then when my father retired, went to an adjacent city called Seaside and kind of grew up there. And that's kind of where it all started for me as a young guy. And as you mentioned, back in the 60s, I can remember in '68, the conversation I was having with my father when Dr. King was assassinated, and kind of walked me back to when he grew up and where Dr. King was right now and what he was trying to do. And basically, it was about fairness and about equality for all Americans, because that's the American dream. You know, that's what this country's built on, a dream. And if you work hard and you do diligent, you can advance in anything you do in America. That's the dream. That's what America sells. Yeah. And so that was kind of the conversation we had. And back in '68, and lo and behold, here about a month ago now, we see this uprising of young people protesting. And I look at that like, for me, Rosa Parks. When you know the story of Rosa Parks, she worked, she cleaned people's homes in Alabama, and she used to catch the bus to where she worked at and would catch the bus home. And finally, one day, she got on the bus, and at that point, you know, people of color had to ride in the back of the bus. And she got on the bus and sat in the front seat. And the bus driver looked at her and said, "What are you doing?" And she said, "I'm tired. I think America's tired. It's tired." And this is why you see the social unrest, the protesting, and you see it's multicolored and it's multi-diverse when you see the people that are all of a sudden protesting, because they understand this. And it's young people, middle-aged people, but a lot of young people. And I think what they don't realize right now, what they're doing is going to help their children. They're pushing this big boulder, and it's a big boulder, man. I mean, it is huge. And it doesn't happen overnight. Change never happens overnight. I go back to what my father told me, the changes that were going to benefit me, because him serving in the military, and the next generation is going to have to make it better for the next generation. So it's this big rock that you push. And when you watch it unfold right now, it reminds me a lot of the 60s, late 60s and 70s when I grew up.
You know, it's interesting because you mentioned that term, young people. There's a lot of people that are watching our webinar right now that are of that younger generation. I was talking to one of our mutual friends in Curtis Conway the other day, and he said the same exact thing. He said, you know, I look back at some of the things that was happening around Rodney King when I was growing up in Southern California, and the things that were happening there. And he said, it's all young people. He said, look, I'm a lot older now, and it's a little bit of a different, you know, stage of life for me to be involved in stuff like that. But at the same time, it's this push. And I think what you just said resonates. It's this huge boulder that needs to change. You're, you know, a leader of a lot of young men who I'm sure have a lot of those opinions. Take me inside that locker room. And I know with COVID-19, this other pandemic that we're living through right now, you don't necessarily get the one-on-one time that I know you wish you had with these guys. But because of technology, like right now that we're using, you have an ability to connect with some of those players. What are the conversations like with you and your team?
Well, I told them we addressed the team. I actually addressed the team last week when all this was occurring, and told the players, you know, we're unique in the fact that when you're an athlete, there's this huddle that you belong to. And the huddle is all the community from different walks of life. And it really doesn't matter because you learn how to function with each other. And the fact that you can be Black, you can be Hispanic, you can be white, it really doesn't matter because you understand you need each other to have success. And that's what sports kind of brings. It's a unique thing when you think about sports. Even a fan base. Think about all the people that walk into the stadium from different parts of the city, wherever they live. And they live in their little pockets, and that's where their culture's at. But when they come into the stadium, when they come into the home stadium, that's their team. And they wear the jerseys and they get all excited. And then when they leave, they go back into their little communities and they kind of sit there, right? And the thing about sports, and I've always said this about life, it's who is in your inner circle. Who are the people that influence you? Well, I will tell you this, if your inner circle, everyone looks like you really don't gain another perspective of what's going on. It's kind of, you heard or somebody told me. But when someone is actually in your circle where you have to communicate with them or you need them to be successful, you learn a lot about their culture. And now all of a sudden, you get to wear someone else's shoes. It's easy to say, oh, I don't understand that. No, you know why you don't understand it? First of all, who's in your huddle? Who are the people you allowing in your huddle? And then I've always said, it's always easy to say something about a person, but until you walk in their shoes, you really don't know how it feels.
Yeah. Coach, how do you explain the dichotomy between, and you as a coach now, there's a certain level of fame that you have because of what you're doing at ASU, what you did at ESPN, what you did as an NFL coach, what you did as an NFL player. You're celebrated as an African-American male. And yet when you leave that stadium, when there's not tens of thousands of people cheering you on, I would imagine it's a pretty different environment for someone who doesn't know that you're Herm Edwards, NFL coach, head coach at ASU. How do you explain what that's like?
Well, I just think there's certain things when you grow up in life. I always tell the story, you know, when you're excited about getting your license, right? You're going to take the test and you're going, man, I get to finally drive. And that's like a big accomplishment for you, right? In life, so I get to drive a car and your parents over there sweating because I got insurance, you know, I got to worry about all these things. But how many people have this conversation? And this conversation happens a lot in homes of men of color. The first thing the conversation is not so much about, you know, responsibility and all this other stuff. It's if the police pull you over, this is what you have to do. How many people have that conversation?
Turn off the key, put the key on the dashboard, hands on the wheel.
Put your hand out the window.
Yeah.
My dad said, put him out the window. Right. And so, I mean, that's part of now they don't teach you that driver's ed. They don't teach you that driver's ed. They tell you the signal and they tell you when to turn, when to put the brake on and all that. But that's a conversation and people laugh and say, no, because you're going to get stopped. And it's just a matter of how many times, according to where you live. And that's just, there's a little things that just happen and you like, really? And you know, and you're used to it. You just say, that's part of the deal. I get it. Well, that shouldn't be really part of the deal. But I think when you live in a person of color shoes, you realize that this is just part of the deal. And you tell people that sometimes they look at you like they're making this up. No, that's not a made up story. It's the truth. And there's these little things. It's like for me, I've been a head coach 3 places, right? And it's kind of interesting because one of the questions, you know what's coming. You know you're the first. Don't tell me I'm the first Black coach. I just want to be the coach. I get it. Wherever I've been the first. I mean, come on. It's like, look, I started coaching, I started coaching football, in the 90s. And so you think about it, and a lot of these coaches go through the same deal. And the media makes a big, well, he's the first Black. Why? We get that part, but we just want to be the coach. like everyone else. When you think of it, how about this now? And I think a lot of people don't think about this. Growing up as an athlete, from high school to college to professional football, I never had a black coach me at my position.
Wow.
I never had a black head coach. Didn't know what they looked like. So think about this now. Let's just say if you're a white player or player not of color, I might be the first black coach you ever played for. So now it's flipped on them. I got to play for a black coach, which it shouldn't matter. It's just a coach. But I think there's so many layers of this that you just take it for granted because you just think, and you just learn how to live that way. And you want to be accepted as a coach. Bottom line, you're a builder of men. You're a leader of men. As a coach, as a head coach, you provide knowledge and you serve them. They don't serve you. Yeah. That's what I've always learned about leadership. You actually serve them. And how can you help them? How can you help them to achieve what they want to achieve? The best version of their self. That's what we're trying to coach and teach at ASU. That a player comes in there, a student athlete, and make him the best version of himself. And if you can do that, you set him on the right track to be successful in life.
Coach, I want to go back to the conversation that you had with some of your players, because I think to set them on a successful path, you need to be aware of a lot of things that they're experiencing in life. And you had made reference to George Floyd's murder a few weeks ago. I think most of us need time, and maybe some of us haven't even fully processed what the emotions were for them to watch this unfold on their televisions. Your perspective, once again, really unique because of all the things that you've done in life. But what are the emotions? How do you process something like that?
Well, I think you process it this way. America's not utopia, and it never will be. There's always been this part of America that, for some reason, and I can't talk for them, there's been this racism. There's this racism factor, and maybe it's through the heritage of how America was built and how America and a lot of people won't let that go. Okay, they just feel like that this is the way it should be, and you're not going to change those people. I've always said this growing up, that I would prefer to know a person that is considered a racist, because then I know that I'm not going to have a long conversation with this guy, and I'm not going to try to change it. At least the one that hinders you, that won't allow you to advance in America, is hidden racism. Yeah, that's the one that gets you. That's the cruelest of all, because you can be working for somebody, and you're working as hard as you can to advance, and you'll never advance. You'll never get the job you think that you had anticipated, right? Maybe because you're a person of color, you're a woman, whatever it may be. They have a certain identity of, this is the person that should have this job, and these other people don't look like that. So now what we've seen in America, there's always been racism, but now it's on tape, and it's ugly. Yeah. And people are angry. They're like, this shouldn't happen. The human element is coming out now because it's on tape. It's not a movie, it's real. That Floyd situation, it wasn't a movie. That was real. A man lost his life. We watched a man for 8 minutes, and we watched it, and we went, no, this is not. This is 2020. Why is this happening?
It's a hard pill to swallow, I think, for a lot of people. And I think as you're speaking, I think of that old adage for minorities and females that haven't been able to rise. It's something to the effect of, you got to work twice as hard to get half as much, I think is sort of the phrase. But this as someone who's building an ASU program into one of the elite teams in the entire country. it's a process, right? You don't, coach, you didn't show up to campus and then snap your fingers and all of a sudden it changes. And you said, hey, like there's been racism. You mentioned growing up in the 60s, civil rights movement. Look, I'm 38, you're older than I am, but I would imagine, and I don't want to speak for you, but things obviously are different from the 1960s, and they've skewed probably in a more positive direction, but still leaps and bounds. We still need to go. So what's the process? How do you change what's happening in this country? What does that look like?
Well, there's a couple things. First of all, I think when you think about America, there have been a lot of people that have been entitled. And certain things they were going to achieve or receive just because of their entitlement.
Yeah.
Well, now America is becoming more of a competitive world, right? For all walks of life. And some people that have been entitled through generation and generation, they don't like that. They don't like that. They don't want to, why I say that, they don't want to compete. They don't want to really compete. It's kind of like, well, I want to get this job because I look like this. And, you know, I've had connections with these people, which is rightly so in all communities. But for the most part, this is the thing now. So now they're like, I really got to compete. Yeah, you got to compete. And it's not just of people of color, or it's women too. You know, women want their place at the table, rightly so. Yeah. I get that part. I really do. I understand it. Because I think when you're a minority, you feel the pain of all those people that are trying to advance, but for some reason, like yourself, okay, the Asian population, whatever it may be, there's always this like, there's this underlining, and you can't see it. It's invisible, but you feel it. You feel it. And until somebody walks in your shoes, they don't understand that. But we all feel it. And we don't say anything. We just got, okay, that, you know, I don't have to run a mile. I got to run a mile and a half. Okay, I get it. I'll run my mile and a half. So that's where we're at when you think about America and what we're struggling with, right? And you know, athletes, for the most part, were nervous about speaking on subjects like this.
Yeah.
Because if they did, they were blackballed. You can't do that. It's almost funny because I've said this. We see all these protesters. They're not professional protesters. They actually have jobs.
Yeah.
Well, when you're an athlete, that's your job. That's not who you are. That doesn't define who you are. You're a father, you're a husband, you're a community servant. And then that's your occupation. You know, your occupation is what you do, but that doesn't define who you are. But I think sometimes when you're put in this box of being an athlete or a coach, well, you shouldn't say anything. You just coach, or you dribble the ball, or you catch the ball. We don't want to hear you. Well, now they have a platform. Why? Because of social media.
Wow.
Everyone has a platform, whether you like it or not. Now, what I always say this, and I tell my players this all the time, look, when you press send, I'm the guy that said, don't press send. And I said it for a reason, jokingly, make sure you look at it before you press it. What you got to understand is this. This is how it works. You have to be a good listener, both parties. If you're not willing to listen, you never can come up with a solution. It's easy to say, this is wrong, that's wrong, this is wrong. Okay, what's the solution? I always tell my players this, hey, don't be part of the problem. Bring solutions and be a good listener. Because until we're able to do that, we really can't communicate. That's why in the huddle in football, only one guy talks. Everybody else will listen. Say, okay, here's the play. Okay, this is what you do. This is what I do. Okay, let's go. It takes that.
Speaking of hitting send, Coach, I remember a tweet that you sent out. You do this with some of your players. You said to be a good communicator and listener, you have to listen with your eyes and your ears, which I think speaks to what you're discussing right now. Coach, you're as positive a person as I've ever met in my entire life, and I've known you for years now. But you just set up something that seems too daunting for me, right? At least when you make the analogy of being an athlete, roll out the ball. head out onto the field. The end result is a win or a loss. And yet in the people, some of those protesters who have jobs, those 9-to-5s that are not athletes, that aren't making their living, like they can run uphill, and yet it might not be good enough. Like, I'm still trying to wrap my head, and maybe you can offer some insight on this. How do you get ahead if there is a ceiling? If there is, like you said, you don't see the racism, but you feel it, and you do work a little bit extra hard, and yet you still can't get ahead. Like, what do you do? What's the advice to that person, or the person in management who has the ability to change the circumstances for minorities and females?
Well, some will feel empathy and go, you know what? It's time for me to listen and time for me to grow. Some will not. Some will sit in that seat of power and don't even worry about it. When you look at the NFL, look how the NFL is structured.
Yeah.
32 teams, no men of color that own the team. All right. Now that's no, I'm just saying, all right. When you look at not the football side of it, but the management side of it, dealing with football, right? Just NFL, 70% of the players are black. 3 head coaches, 2 GMs. Who are the decision makers? See, to me, that's where it starts. And it's the circle of influence. Who influences you? Who is in your circle? Who is in your circle? And until that circle has different voices from different walks of our community, you never hear that story. You can gain no knowledge. Your knowledge is all what you heard or what somebody said.
Yeah.
See, because we're all influenced by, we all have influences in our life. And the influences for me have always been the people that you allow in your circle, the people that you trust. Well, if they don't look like you and they're not from your culture, then how do you know how they feel? You don't. I hear some people say, well, yeah, I'm not a racist. I have a black friend. What is that? You kidding me? Come on, man. It shouldn't, you know what I mean? I mean, maybe because I'm older, I don't look at, I don't look through the lens of black and white. I just look at people. They're just people, and you treat them that way. I mean, that's not real hard to figure out. Now, there's always some little jokes and stuff, but that's part of athletics. That's part of sports. But at the end, they're your teammate, and you do anything for them. I mean, you do it because you've earned their trust. You know why? Because you come in the huddle and you work with them every day, and you see how hard they work, and you watch them, and you learn about them. And that's the uniqueness of it all. That's the uniqueness of a huddle. You find out what's in someone else's home. I've always said this: character, like good soup, is made at home. It's made at home. What are you talking to your kids about right now in America about what's going on? What conversation are you having with your kids when you get them off that phone and you actually sit down and have dinner together? What is the conversation? That's how you change. It starts with me talking to my daughters about what they're watching on television and why for them, they've got to understand in life, you got to make it better for your children. And this is how you do it, right? Those are the conversations that have to be had. That's how you change. That's how it changes. And until we're able to do that, and a lot of people won't do it. They'll say, hey, man, I'm good. I'm set. I don't have to worry about it. That's not my problem. No, it's not your problem, but it's going to be your children's problem. Kick the can down the road.
Coach, I know we have a lot of people that are watching right now, and I encourage you guys in the chat to fire off some questions, and I could go all day with you. So my last question to you before we get to some of the questions from our audience, we're going to have a session a little bit later, Coach. We have a PhD, Dr. Slovic is going to be with us, and he does a lot of research and talks on critical thinking and how the brain works and making decisions. And part of the session, he's going to explain how the brain actually processes risk. And we'll define risk as maybe climate change, racism, other actions that result or sort of imply a negative vibe here. From a practical standpoint, what is it that works to get everyone on the same page? Is there something over your years as a head coach or part of a team or doing talks at Fortune 500 companies that you implement that explain how do we get people, whether it's climate change, whether it's racism, any ism, to kind of funnel in one direction?
Well, I think it all, life is about this. It's about trust. It really is. And how do you create trust? I've always said this, your word is your bond. And your name's attached to what you say.
Yeah.
It's our words and our actions. Do they match up? And here's life. What we do in the dark comes to the light. It just does. You get exposed. You say one thing, but are your actions matching that? And I've always said that. There's this word out there. And I use it every once in a while. I tell guys all the time, the team say, you know what? You got to be a man of integrity. And people say that a lot. Well, what does that mean? The words in your life, do they match up? Not just when people are watching, but when no one's watching. Like, are you a man of integrity? Do you walk with integrity? Do you make some errors at times? Yes.
Yeah.
But when you do, you say, you know what? That's on me. I made a mistake. Be a man of integrity. That's how you earn trust. And hopefully in my lifetime, being in football, that the people that I've been in contact with from all levels, from owners, GMs, players, coaches, that if they say, who is this guy? Who is this Herm Edwards guy? They say, that dude's a man of integrity, man. It is what it is. He says it and he walks it.
Yep.
Is it hard? It's hard. But you got to want to do that because that's how you earn trust. That's the only way you earn trust. I mean, what is true trust? True trust is, hey, man, I never worried when I was a coach how the team was going to play. I knew that they were going to, whatever they had in them, they're going to leave it on the grass, man. Go, because they trusted the fact that this is what we got to do. And hopefully I earned their trust to say, you got to do this. You're not doing this for me. You're doing it for the guys in the huddle. My accomplishment in life and sports, I tell people this all the time. The thing that I hold on to, and the thing that I understand, from high school to college to professional football, I never missed a start. I never missed a practice.
Yeah.
You know why? I didn't want to let my teammates down. I wanted them to trust me. I can count on that guy, man. I can count on him. He's going to be there every day. That's what people want. And you can't make that up. You can't. There's no contract you sign. You just show up. Yeah. And they go, man, this dude's here every day, man. He just does what he does. I can trust him. That's real simple. Anybody can do that. It doesn't take talent to earn trust.
By the way, you trusted your players, you're number one at ASU, because I felt like the game plan, and you and I talked about this, I think it was in Seattle when you guys were playing Washington, keep it close and give ourselves a chance late to win it. I don't know if there was a team in the country that was winning one possession games more than you were in your number one. So a lot of trust in your players, obviously, to execute on the football field. Coach, awesome stuff. I know we got to get to some questions here, but really, really insightful.
Thank you.
Coming back live with everyone right now. We're going to punch Herm back onto your screen momentarily. And yes, Coach, new digs. You're in the office.
I'm in my office.
By the way, and I do know this is a rule. My understanding is your office door is never closed, correct?
It's open right now.
More of a symbolic thing. Anyone can come in and go and talk to Coach. We do have some people, by the way, I really appreciate your time and your willingness to be so open about not only your personal experiences, but everything that's happening right now in the country. We do have some questions, so I want to get to them. I'm going to start with Graham here. Coach, do you have an example of a time when you wish you had reacted differently in regards to a comment or an action of someone else on the team?
Oh, I've probably said some things that you wish you could take back. And I think, I can't recall just one specific one, but there's probably been some things even when I was on television that I probably didn't think it through. I do know this. I'm a big believer in this, is that when you have to make decisions, I never make emotional decisions, because generally when you do that, they're going to be wrong. And I've caught myself numerous times making an emotional decision. I'm a pretty calm guy when it comes to decision making, to be quite honest. Yeah. My temperature is kind of low. Now, people wouldn't anticipate that because of how I act and, this persona that I've obviously been given. But I'm pretty calm. But I can remember some things. Here's one. So I was the assistant head coach with the Buccaneers with Tony Dungy when we were trying to build that program. And I can remember in the second quarter of a game, there was a guy struggling, and rather than to wait till the series got over with, I ran another guy in the game, right? And he had to come off. And the timing just wasn't right, because it was a bad play, and all of a sudden I'm bringing the other guy in because I'm trying to help him, right? And I'm not thinking of that. And he comes off the field and he looks at me and he said, "Coach." I go, "Yeah, you all right?" And he said, "Oh, Coach." He says, "Please don't do that." I said, "What are you talking about?" I had the guy, and he talked to me. He said, "Oh, Coach," he says, "it makes it look like you pulled me out of the game." And I looked at him and I went, "You know what? You're right." And I apologize. That was a learning moment for me. Sure. As a coach, because I would have felt the same way as a player. Hey, I know I messed up, Coach, but don't pull me out after the play, because everybody understands, and my parents understand, my wife's understand, you're pulling me out of the game, right? And it just looks bad, right? And I got that. So I just think, and when you do it, you gotta fess up to it and say, I made a mistake, and it's on me.
I like that, by the way, because when you pull out a player now at ASU, all of us, back in the studio in the booth,
I won't do it.
Just double checking and making sure. It sounded like you learned your lesson there. Another question from an anonymous person right now, which hopefully doesn't mean it's too crazy. Coach, how do you build an inclusive and equitable culture, especially beyond your scope of your role or your job?
Well, I think the people you invite in your room, it's easy in athletics, to be quite honest. It really is, because of the ability to recruit players. And there's a lot of things when goes into recruiting, not just the talent part, not just the position the guy plays, but a lot of it has to do with his character and his upbringing. And I think you get all kind of players in your locker room from different environments and from different cultures. And that's a great blend in athletics. And they find a way to, it's a great, I always say it's great soup, because there's a lot of different elements in the soup, right? And it comes out pretty good.
Soup made at home, by the way.
Yes,
that line on me.
Is the best.
Coach, I like this question from Luke. He said, what's your advice to people seeing the massive jump in athletics from high school to the college level? I've noticed instead of one or two coaches yelling at you in a high school practice, it's 3 or 4 or more people yelling at you in practice in college, and the intensity is so much more at the college level. You don't yell, Coach.
I think everyone coaches different. It's one thing to holler, but it's another thing to understand, you're trying to correct the player. I live by this philosophy. I've never seen an athlete go out on the field to want to do something wrong.
Yeah.
They don't go out on the field and go, I'm going to mess up on this play. I just think there's a correction part of it. There's this process of how you teach. And I've always said this, there comes a point to where you have to be really calm when you're about to make a point to a player, because they're upset. They're emotionally upset. The coach is emotionally upset. Well, how do you communicate within that 4, I always call it a 4-second window, because you never know what's going to happen. He might have to go right back on the field. So how do you calm him down? And sometimes you don't go to him right away. Sometimes you wait. You got to know your player. Sometimes you don't, I got to wait. I'm going to let him sit down, and I'll come see you in a few minutes, right? Yeah. And I just think every coach does it a little bit different. That is kind of the way I do it. I prefer to do it that way.
Coach, I want to be respectful of time, but I have another question that I want to get you, because I think it's important, from Richard. You talked about how this moment that we're going through now in this country reminds you of Rosa Parks. As you witness what's going on now and you see how it's a younger generation playing such a huge role, how encouraged are you about the future of this country?
Very encouraged, especially for my daughters, who are 14 and 13 years old right now. And then hopefully the talks we have in our home, when they have children, it will be better for their children for what they have done and what they have stood for. You know, our deal right here at ASU is real simple. We challenge all our student athletes not to stand in silence when there are moments of injustice and racism. When they appear, we encourage our team and our players, because they have a platform, to use their voice, but be a voice of reason and be a voice of solutions. That will help America move forward.
Coach, I'm going to go one more question just because of time, if that's okay.
Sure.
How do we influence and make people just not be non-racist, but be anti-racist and also take action?
Well, I think right now we're in America. We're in this place in America right now where you got to make a decision. And I just told you, we tell our players, don't sit there silently. When you see injustice and racism occur, you have a platform, regardless if you're an athlete or a person in the community, to say something. Don't allow it to happen. If you witnessed it, don't allow it to happen. And if you say it's not your problem, you're probably right. It's not your problem, but it'll be your children's problem.
Yeah, it's a good point. And I know you don't want your daughters have to dealing with any of this stuff. Coach, you have been so gracious with your time. Appreciate you giving us some minutes here and answering some of these questions. I mean this from the bottom of my heart. You are seriously one of the great coaches that we have in this conference as a person. A lot of the things that you said, I know at least resonated for me. And I would imagine for the couple hundred people that are right now on this webinar, your words are really meaningful.
Well, I appreciate you, my friend. And I just think we appreciate all the folks that are attending this this new way of communication in America. Hopefully this is going to end. But it's my pleasure. And I've always said this for all the people that are on the other side of the screen. Everything I've actually learned, I've learned from somebody else. We are creatures of always trying to gain knowledge. And you just have to make sure the knowledge that you're gaining will advance you, but also advance the people in America. That's very important in a positive way. That's very important in my eyes. So God bless you, and thank you all for being a part of this.
Coach, stay healthy. Use the hand sanitizer. Hopefully your players have a successful campaign. I knew you'd be prepared. You are like the consummate voice.
I got nice masks too. I got good masks.
I hope it's branded. It looked like it was branded with that ASU logo. I know that that's important, but appreciate all the questions. And I know we didn't have enough time to get to all of them, but enjoy your lunch break. We're going to see you back here. You can use the same exact Zoom link for our next session, which is student activism, that we have a couple of top tier athletes in this conference really using their platform for change. That's at 1 p.m. Pacific time. So you can use, once again, that Zoom link. We will see you in a little bit, and hopefully you can grab a bite to eat right now. Thanks again, Coach.
Thank you now.
Oh, welcome back, everybody, and thank you for tuning in. If you're just joining us, we're about to kick off our panel with Natalie, Chou, and Elijah Hicks. We're going to talk to them about their activism and how they've used their platform as student athletes to make a difference and be active social justice advocates. Now, Natalie is a student athlete from UCLA's women's basketball team. She's in her senior year, majoring in sociology. And with the Bruins, Natalie's actually made 29 appearances, started 13 games in her first active campaign under Corey Close. Now, she's also averaging about 7.5 points per game. And Natalie continues to use her platform to speak out against racism that she has seen as the Asian American community has been dealing with a lot with COVID-19. Now, Elijah, he's a student athlete from Cal's football team, also in his senior year, and he's majoring in American studies. In his Cal career, Elijah's played in every single game with 30 starts. He's posted a career total of 113 tackles. And Elijah, off the field, has actually founded a nonprofit last year called Intercept Poverty to help raise money for the Group No Kid Hungry Foundation, which is actually helping to feed children across the country impacted right now by the COVID-19 pandemic. My discussion with Natalie and Elijah actually happened on Monday. Natalie and Elijah both are live for questions and answers after the discussion. So please send those questions in. You can use that Q&A function at the bottom of your screen. You can chat with us about any comments or feedback that you may have. Well, Elijah, I will start with you and your nonprofit. What even sparked you to come up with the idea to create this?
Well, coming into college, I had a lot of support and help from individuals during my high school career. I lived with four different families during my high school time, and they took me in. They didn't have to do those things, and I feel like I'm in debt for that. And so now that have a platform and I'm in a position to help others, I'm just continuing to try to find ways to give back to the community, because I know how important it is, and I know how much impact it can have on just one person. And so that's really what I want to do, is just help one person. But along the way, however many we could help, that's kind of like what I want to do.
All right, I should probably back up here. Take me through the nonprofit and some of the things that you're actually doing to help the community.
Okay. So, initially the mission of Intercept Poverty Foundation is to help college students overcome financial roadblocks. And so we're in the process of creating scholarships with Scholarship America. We're going to partner with them, and they're going to help us manage the scholarship, and we're going to be able to give that out. But, COVID-19 hit us all by surprise, and this was an opportunity to help families who may relied on reduced lunch or free lunch from, public schools. And, I have 10 siblings. So, I still have younger siblings who relied on those meals as well. And after talking with my dad on the phone, I just understood, like, this is an issue. Like, this isn't just affecting my family. This is something that a lot of families are going through now. And so I just kind of thought, like, I want Intercept Poverty to intercept poverty by, raising some funds and trying to help these low-income families. And so I talked to some fellow teammates of mine, Cam Bynum, Ashton Davis, who just got drafted. And then I reached out to other, DBs in the Pac-12 as well. And I edited the video. I told them what to talk about, but they kind of freestyled it, and they showed their real passion and how much they care for the situation. And I put the video together. I called No Kids Hungry Foundation, and I partnered with them. They helped me set up a fundraiser, and I had some help from Pac-12, Cal football, to get some of the recognition and notice of what I was doing. And, I had so much support, and we was able to raise over $60,000. And
Wow.
So a lot of families were helped from that. And so I'm just super thankful that people believed in what the Intercept Poverty campaign was doing. And, it's like everybody in the community had a part in that. So I'm just really thankful.
No, it's really cool. And you mentioned platform and using your platform, Natalie. I know you've done the same, and you and I have had these conversations, but I think back to a conversation with Herm Edwards that everyone saw a little bit earlier in the day, where he mentioned sort of the youth in this country that has an opportunity to really make a push and make a difference. And I think for I don't know, maybe you get jaded, right? Like, I'm 38. I look back and go, how can a college kid really help? But in your case, Elijah, you've really made a huge impact. Logistically, how difficult was it to sort of create a nonprofit and go through some of the things that you've had to deal with to have the benefit of being able to help families in the community?
Well, it was a extreme learning process. I mean, I didn't know how to file with the IRS, and so there was a lot of trial and error. I mean, filling out paperwork, doing it wrong, but going back in and emailing back and forth for the mistakes, and going through that process, actually learning it. And obviously, I have some great professors at Cal who helped me, walk me through the steps. But as I continue to go through this process, I just I'm learning. I'm learning every single step of the way. But it was all worth it when I finally got approved by the IRS. And it's just understanding. It's just a learning process. And so, the compliance, dealing with compliance, because I'm a student athlete as well. That's something that I constantly am going through. That's something I'm constantly working with. But they're in communications with me, and we're just making sure we're doing everything right, because I don't want people to think that this money is going to me and and that I'm using it for my own benefit, because that's not the case. And just understanding that it's a nonprofit, it has its own bank account, and there's different ways to receive money so that we could live out the nonprofit's mission without me all the way controlling it. So there's just so much to it that I'm learning, and but it's so awesome, and I'm thankful for this opportunity to be able to do this.
You haven't asked for advice, but I'll give it to you anyway. Don't mess with the IRS is probably, if there's one thing that you could take away, that would be it. I also am curious, because you mentioned the $60,000. Like, who was the pool? Like, where did that money come from?
Yeah, so there's the Goldman family. They donated $20,000. That was
Wow.
a really big chunk. But then again, there's just like, Cal fans, Cal alumni, but it was also some other guys who like Notre Dame fans, and they supported. It was just kind of support from all over the country. So that's just wonderful.
Yeah, you mentioned Notre Dame. I'm wondering if it was, our friend of an enemy, right? Because your guys' big rivalry is Stanford, and that Notre Dame-Stanford game is always usually big time. So maybe they said, oh, we'll help out another Cal guy and see, hopefully, and for a good cause, which would be good.
That's all. It's also funny because I was committed to Notre Dame, so they know my name, and I didn't end up going there. But it's good to see they still got some people who want to support a good cause.
Well, it's a great cause, and I want to hear more about it in just a couple minutes here and take some questions about it. By the way, if you guys are watching, and you are, obviously, bottom right of your Zoom, there's that Q&A function. We'll get to your questions and answers coming up here. But Natalie, I want to focus in on you and your story. For those who don't know, you have been pretty outspoken in publicly about the treatment and your experiences as an Asian American in this country around COVID-19. How difficult is it for you, or was it for you, to tell your story and share some of those experiences that, quite honestly, weren't positive?
Yeah, well, when COVID started and I started seeing like the vibes of like how the country was responding to Asian Americans, it was really disheartening. I didn't think I would say anything like in the beginning, because I thought other people would, like other famous people like Asian American actresses or athletes. But as time went on, I realized like no one was really saying anything. So I decided it was my duty and it's my responsibility for my family and my community to say something and speak up, and so people can understand what the Asian American community is going through during the coronavirus. So yeah, I was really hesitant. Before I tweeted out anything, before I even wrote anything, I like made sure to check with like my coaches, my mentors, my sister, my mom, to see what they thought about it, because I know anything of this sort, it can bring a lot of negative and positive feedback.
Sure.
So I just wanted to make sure that I was hitting all my bases.
Yeah, it's an interesting point, because Elijah, you were discussing what it was like to deal with people on the campus and dealing with the IRS and filling out paperwork. And yet I don't think you were worried about negative backlash. This is a great cause. It's a nonprofit. It's helping out people in the community. And yet, from your perspective, Natalie, like, what was the reaction of coaches? Because this is a political topic that is polarizing. You and I both have talked about this even off camera. Like, you get some hate when you start talking about your personal experiences. And Elijah, I'm sure you have with regard to racism, but what was the response from Corey Close and people at UCLA?
Yeah, so I am just so grateful for the people at UCLA. Coach Corey is all about us finding our voices and speaking out our truths and what we feel. And honestly, you don't get that a lot from a lot of coaches and a lot of organizations. So I'm just really happy, and I'm just really blessed to be where I am at UCLA today.
All right, what were some of the reactions that you got when you speak about going out where you are at home and just feeling different and getting looks, and then reading about other Asian Americans around the country that have been attacked, being blamed, being yelled at, spit on, the list goes on and on?
Yeah, so like my friends and family and my close circle were all really, really supportive. They understood where I was coming from, and they thought that it was something that I needed to speak on. So I'm really grateful for my inner circle. But as athletes, we know not to focus on what other the fans or the outsiders say about us. So I really try not to read any of the comments that anyone else put if they weren't like my friends or family, because I mean, anything of this sort, there's always going to be negative and people that don't agree with you. And I just really tried to avoid that, because I just wanted to get my message out there, and I just wanted people to empathize and understand what other communities were going through.
Almost wonder too, and I think where I was going with the first question about how difficult it was for you to speak out, I think a lot of times it's a wait and see approach in other avenues, just to see if people who have this huge platform, like you had said, other athletes or celebrities, so to speak. And I don't know, I think from a cultural standpoint, Natalie, like Asian community, like you're not really public about emotions and feelings, and you're certainly not talking about, you know, family experiences publicly. It's a different sort of environment that's there. What's been the reaction from, you know, some siblings, cousins, family, mom, like the whole thing, like internally there?
Yeah, so like you said, I'm Chinese, and the Chinese culture is kind of go under the radar, succeed under the radar in the shadows. And yeah, like you said, you don't see a lot of Chinese or Asian Americans speaking out over any of this on social media. So when I spoke with my mom, she was kind of hesitant, because it's just the culture to not want to draw much attention, especially on something kind of controversial. But as I tried to talk to her and I explained what I felt like my position was in all of this, she definitely understood. She's all about speaking out for what's right. And so, yeah. And my sister, she is all about this. She was the one behind me, like encouraging me, always like editing my stuff. So I'm really grateful for her.
What is the main takeaway from the things that you've written about, talking about your personal experiences? At least in Elijah's case, it was, hey, I want to help people in the community. I want to make sure that people are getting fed. From your perspective, what's that big picture point that you want to resonate with people?
I just want people to empathize and just gain perspective, even if you don't understand or you never experienced racism. I just want people to understand that other groups are going through this experience, and I just would like people to educate and empathize with others. Yeah.
All right, I want both of you guys to kind of go back and forth and answer this question in terms of things that are happening. You know, a couple months ago, the three of us were supposed to be all together. We were supposed to be doing the sustainability conference all in person. So we're dealing with this COVID-19 pandemic, which has sparked both of the activism that you guys have displayed. But at the same time, and I think there's a little bit of a parallel with COVID-19 and race relations, more specifically to what, Natalie, you've been discussing, but yet on the flip side, now you're ratcheting it up another level because of a lot of the unrest after the murder of George Floyd. You know, Elijah and Natalie, both you guys, and Elijah, I'll start with you here. Like, explain what the conversations are like with you and your teammates. I know you guys aren't in a locker room just yet, but I know you guys are all in constant communication. What is being discussed right now about the unrest in our country?
Well, you know, first of all, the communication between teammates is really big right now as far as emotional support, because, you know, it is a tough time for us as Black men in this country. And, you know, we're starting off by trying to figure out how we can help, whether it's peaceful protests, whether it's behind the scenes, creating unique ways to help push the African-American community forward. And so we're talking about these things, even when it comes to voting. We're having conversations with Coach Wilcox about having a Black Lives Matter themed football game, about having a fist decal on our helmets, or even things like helping us register to vote so we could learn that process. And even for the guys who are, you know, out of state, and, you know, it may be more difficult for them to understand the process, and education as far as helping us understand the different political leaders and people who's running for certain positions, helping us understand their roles and what they believe in, and just giving us education. So from there, we'll have a better understanding of maybe who we should vote for, and, you know, the local or on a national scale. So that's kind of like what we're talking about. But, you know, at the same time, every day, just talking to each other about, you know, how are you doing today? stay strong, keep taking care of yourself mentally, physically. And so, you know, the constant support is good. And, you know, I'm thankful for, you know, Coach Wilcox because, you know, he's come about this the right way. And he understands that he doesn't know what it means to be Black in America, but he's tried his best to understand and just asking us like, what can he do to support us and help us? And so that's all we really ask for. And that's what we're thankful for.
Natalie, what about for you in those conversations with your teammates?
Yeah, so Coach Corey has been amazing with all of this. We've had some Zoom calls, it's just open, anyone, however you feel, you can speak on just what's going on. And for me, I will never know how it feels to be, just have this systemic racism over my head. Like I've never experienced that. And a lot of my teammates haven't either, but just learning and educating ourselves on what the Black Americans are feeling and experiencing every single day. It's just so important to me. And I always talk to my teammates and ask questions because I need to learn and I can never understand. And just also trying to educate and just bring awareness to my own inner circle because it starts from my own family and in my own community.
Yeah. Elijah, from your perspective, what Natalie was just saying, hey, we don't know what your experiences are like, right? Can you just put into perspective the day-to-day? I think it's become more and more apparent the more we watch our news coverage, the more we see and have the conversations that we've been having over the last couple of weeks. But give us some context. I mean, Justin Wilcox, you referenced him. Hey, we don't know. He doesn't know what it's like to be an African-American in this country, but how do we support you? So I would ask you, you know, I guess two questions. A, where the support comes in, but also context on what the day-to-day is actually like for you.
Yeah, well, day-to-day is like, speaking for me, you know, I have mentors that, you know, I learn from, and even when I go to their house and if it's in a nice neighborhood, you know, I might not feel that comfortable driving around looking for their house, parking, getting out their car, waiting just because this is not where I'm from and there's not that many people that look like me in this area. So I start to feel really uncomfortable, and, you know, they're looking at me like, hey, what are you doing around here? Like, you know, you're not supposed to be around. So it's just that feeling. And it's just a super uncomfortable feeling. And even like, you know, UC Berkeley is, you know, a really progressive school. And, you know, they have a lot of people who stand up for racism and stuff like that. But even then, you know, it's just not a lot of us, not a lot of African Americans around. And so when you're in class and when you're walking around campus, you just don't see too many people like you. And so, you know, that's kind of discouraging as well. It don't really matter how tough or strong or who you are. Like, you know, when you don't really see things that looks like you and around you, it kind of make you feel some type of way. And that's just kind of speaking from my own experience. And then, you know, yeah, that's just some day-to-day stuff. And then as far as like what people can do to help, I mean, I guess just continue to learn and educate yourself, and then understand, like, you know, this is how they may feel, and you know, they may act like how Blacks might act a certain way because of that uncomfortable feeling, or they might do certain or don't feel comfortable going to certain places because they might feel uncomfortable when they, you know what I'm saying? So it's just yeah, just continue to educate and understand and have empathy. Yeah.
As you dropped the term voting and you said, hey, would love for people around the school and the campus to help us along so that we can register and understand some of the facts around some of the candidates. I talked to Jimmy Lake at Washington a couple weeks ago, and he had said, hey, you know, we're having these conversations. We're going to invite law enforcement onto our campus to be able to speak to a lot of our student athletes. Want to make sure that on November 3rd, when it comes election day, hey, our athletes, and I think this is an initiative across the board in the NCAA, where we want student athletes to be able to participate in the election and to go and vote. Have you guys thought about voting like you probably are right now, but in years past? Has it been something you've been hyper aware of?
For me, no. You know, really, it's not really talked about that much in the community I was brought up in, and that's not an excuse. But even like in school growing up, you know, it wasn't really drilled in us like how the importance was and the importance of voting. And even at these dinner tables of low income families, like we don't really have our if we are come from a single family household, if our mom or our dad is out working, when we're having dinner, you know, we're not having these conversations on CNN, Fox News, and
Sure.
debating and talking about the different debates that's going on. And so we don't have that knowledge, and we don't really feel that comfortable talking about it because, you know, that's not something we're really exposed to growing up. And so, yeah, it's just like we're not exposed to it. So it's kind of discouraging in a sense when we talk about voting or politics or even when if you go and try to read about all the different things to vote for, the type of wording and the language, everything is just like so overwhelming. So yeah, it'll be cool to like kind of break it down and you know, try to see what it's really about. But it's important, and so now bringing more awareness to it and seeing the importance is going to be awesome, and I think it's going to make a big difference.
Natalie, what about for you on the voting side?
Yeah, same here. Just growing up, it wasn't really prevalent in my life. Even before coming to UCLA, I wasn't really educated when it came to that. But since being at UCLA, I've just learned so much about what I could do and the importance of voting. And I'm just so thankful that I know now. And yeah.
So you're more aware at this point, and I don't want to make this a political conversation, but I'm curious, Natalie, for you. The other day I was, you know, Elijah made reference to CNN and all the news outlets. I feel like with shelter in place here in San Francisco, all I'm doing is watching a ton of news. But President Trump has a rally in Tulsa, and I think, Natalie, for the two of us, and you're Chinese and I'm Chinese as well, we maybe are interpreting things a little bit differently. I'm just curious your reaction when you see the president refer to COVID-19 as the Kung Fu flu. What sort of resonates for you when you hear something like that?
So my friend had texted me a video and I watched it, and it's just really disheartening. It's really, I mean, it's exhausting, but I can't even imagine how it feels for my Black sisters and brothers every single day. The coronavirus and the Chinese virus and the Kung flu, it just started in March. It's just been like a little part of my life that I've had to deal with, but I can't imagine how it feels to live in systemic racism every single day since you were born. And I can't imagine, and I can't imagine. But yeah, when I heard that President Trump referred it to the Kung flu virus, it was just really discouraging and disheartening, and just him making a joke in the climate that we're in right now. It's just really not okay with me.
Elijah, do you feel from a college student's perspective that the country is divided?
Yeah, for sure. But it's also a time for a lot of people to come together. You see a lot of unity going on, and you know, a lot of these corporations, they're starting to realize how they're not as inclusive as they thought they were. And I mean, it's sad that something like George Floyd's death had to spark this, but I think it was a perfect combination of COVID-19 and George Floyd's death that sparked all this chaos, because, you know, we were able to sit down and have time to reflect now, and so yeah, it's creating a lot more unity, more than I've ever seen before, and that's also what my parents is saying too. Like, they haven't saw this many people coming together, white, Black, Asian, and even like, you know, when I go to work out and go to these different neighborhoods, I see white people protesting all on their own with Black Lives Matter signs. That's like never happened before. So yeah, it's kind of divided. It is divided, but at the same time, it's an opportunity for unity and for change. So hopefully we see some positive strides.
Yeah, I think it's a good way of describing it. By the way, we're going to take some of those questions coming up bottom right of your screen. There's that Q&A label there. You could type in those questions and I will fire them off to Elijah and Natalie in just a couple minutes. I know we're sort of the overarching theme in a lot of ways has been COVID-19 on your guys' activism, but school year right around the corner here, getting back onto campus and doing the things that allow you to have the platform, which is be student athletes. Natalie, are you concerned at all about being back on a campus, traveling from Texas to Southern California, being around just the sheer volume of people that you're going to have to be around and playing a sport that is, lack of a better term, I mean, it's contact. I know Corey Close is big on defense here. We're not zoning up a couple feet away, giving people some room to fire off some of those threes. So are you concerned about being back and playing again?
Absolutely. I feel like it's just in everyone's in the back of my mind. I mean, coronavirus is still very prevalent right now, and I think sometimes people forget about that. But I trust wholeheartedly in Coach Corey Close and the UCLA women's basketball program, and I know they would never put us in a dangerous situation. And our health always comes first. But definitely in the back of my mind, it's concerning, and it's like our health, so it comes first. Yeah.
Have you been able to work out the way that you want? I know your mom's running you through drills probably at home, and both you guys are still taking classes at this point. But I would imagine like you're not getting the real burn that you would if we weren't dealing with COVID. You'd probably be at the gym, playing some pickup ball, getting ready. Elijah, for you, I know I'm sure you're still working out. It doesn't look like you're missing or skipping arm day, at least on the home front. But are you still? Do you think you'll be ready, just knowing you're probably not having your normal off season?
For me, there is that little, our coaches, our strength and conditioning coach, sent us like all of our workouts to do at home. But like you said, it's not the same as if we were to be on campus playing pickup, having that contact. So there is a little bit of anxiety when we just thinking about going back and going into like just getting into it. But I mean, like you said, I've been working out with my mom, so I'm not that out of shape and out of it. So yeah.
You'll be ready. Corey won't be disappointed when you get back to Westwood, is what you're telling me. Elijah, I know you're in Berkeley right now. This is where you're doing this Zoom call with us. Are you concerned about starting to, like the sheer volume of people, roster size is just so different for Natalie's perspective of basketball and it is football, but is there a concern for you to be around just a sheer number of people that would be required? And I get it, there's going to be pods of position groups probably in the whole thing, but it's still a little bit of an unknown.
Yeah, it's for sure still at the back of my head, but I think Natalie explained it pretty well. I trust the Cal Athletics and the school to take care of us and do the necessary testing and take the necessary precaution and steps to make the best informed decisions. And as far as workouts go, I've been fortunate enough to have my own set of dumbbells and stuff here. And
sure you do, of course.
I've been figuring it out. At the beginning of quarantine, it was tough finding ways to get the workouts in. But as it started going on, I found ways to keep it up and stay in shape. But that's not the case for everyone and all of our teammates, because there's so many of us, and not everyone has access to those type of things. And then at the same time, everyone's not motivated the same. So as a team, we will probably, everyone will probably struggle preparing and getting ready for the season. And so you might see a lot more injuries and stuff popping up. But individually, I think I'm fine. I think I'm ready to go.
Is there, and look, we'll get to those questions coming up here. Once again, bottom right of your screen, there's that little Q&A label. You can type in those questions. We'll get to them. And the last thing I'll ask you guys before I get to some of these questions, is there something that can be done on the campuses that would help ease your concern? Because it's going to be there until there's a vaccine, right? I think we can all agree on that. So what can Justin Wilcox and that Cal football team do? What can Corey Close and UCLA basketball, what can they do to sort of ease your mind?
For me, I think a lot of my concern comes to like the mental side of it as well. I'm just kind of, I mean, when we get back on campus, like it won't be the same at all. Classes might still be online.
Sure.
It's just the mental health of it, just, you know, working out and then going back to like an empty house with no one there and just sitting there by ourselves. But I know Coach Corey is very aware about our mental health and stuff, but that definitely comes to mind.
Yeah, it's actually a good one. And we touched on it a little bit during the sustainability conference and probably haven't spent enough time. So hopefully some people will be asking some questions about that. What about for you, Elijah?
You know, it's tough. I mean, the mental health part, that's really a big thing because, you know, I'm luckily I have 3 teammates who's been up here this whole time and I have communication with them. But I trust, once again, I just trust that they could feel and understand what we're going through and kind of just put us in a position to succeed. And
Sure.
and so I'm kind of just you know, trying to control what I can control and just see how things go.
No, you guys have been so impressive. I'm glad that we've gotten to know each other a little bit off of this Zoom session, but can't thank you enough for your time here. But I do want to get to some of those questions from our audience. All right, back with you here in my living room, going through some of these questions, and we actually have quite a few. And Natalie, I love the UCLA gear, and Elijah always repping the Cal Bears. Go Bears! All right, let's get to them here. Once again, bottom right of your screen, the Q&A function. Elijah, first one is for you. How do you feel being the first NCAA student athlete to raise money to use his image to help the needy? Obviously, NIL has been a major story, I think, nationally, not just in the Pac-12 conference, across for all college athletes. You using your name, image, and likeness to promote some good.
Yeah, I mean, it's humbling, of course. But, you know, I think it's just about time that, you know, we use our platform to help people in need. There are a lot of student athletes who do things in the community, but now, you know, this is a time and there's a lot of opportunity to help. And so I'm just humbled and thankful that I could make a difference.
Natalie, one for you here. Have you faced any challenges in advocating for Asian American issues during a time when the focus is all on advocating for the Black Lives Matter movement? Some Asian Americans are afraid of taking the attention off of the police reform protests, but do you agree that minorities should lift each other up during a time of systemic change and unrest?
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. Minorities should lift each other up. At the beginning, I mean, the coronavirus, at the beginning of the coronavirus, that was a couple months ago, I wrote an essay for ESPN speaking on it. And in it, the coronavirus has been around for like maybe a couple of months, and this racism is really new for me and for Asian Americans in America. But the racism that Black people in America face has been something since the very beginning of this, like since the very start of this country. And what they go through is completely different from what I've been experiencing with the coronavirus. But yeah, with my journey, before I would post anything, before I would write anything, I'd ask a lot of my teammates how they felt about it. And I never wanted to overstep or overshadow what they've been going through their whole life. And so, yeah, I definitely think that minorities should lift each other up, because what's different about what's happening now is that there's so many different people from different countries rising up and speaking out about Black Lives Matter, which is amazing. And I feel like minorities, we all have a voice and we can all educate and inform our communities about what's happening.
I think it's pretty impressive by you to go to some of your Black teammates and ask them about things before you post. I'm curious, has anyone said anything to you, Natalie, about, hey, maybe now is not the time to post X, Y, or Z?
No, my teammates have been, I was expecting that because of everything that they've gone through. It's just so hard, and experiencing just like an inch of what they go through is just really hard. But all of my teammates have been telling me it's my story, it's my journey, and informing people is what's most important about what other groups are going through. So they've all been very helpful and really supportive.
An interesting take there. This question for both of you guys, Elijah, I start with you with answering here. Many of us on this call are collegiate coaches or administrators. What do you see as some of the necessary changes we can make to diversify the industry and better serve our Black, Asian, and other non-white student athletes?
That's a really good question. I think the first step is of acknowledging that there's not enough representation, and that's a lot of things that these times are creating and forcing people to look at their institution and be like, you know what, we don't have enough Blacks or minorities, and so I think that's really big. But then actually trying to create steps, having those meetings, having those difficult conversations with either minorities or people in those powerful positions to really create change and not just, talk about it, but actually do something about it.
Natalie, what about you? What do you think?
Yeah, so for me, I feel like representation is just so important, whether it be on the court, like in movies or in anywhere. So what I just think thinking outside of the box is just really important. My coach, Coach Corey Close, actually had a Asian American Heritage Night / game for me, and that just meant so much to me. It's never like happened to me before, and we just had like a Asian national anthem singer, Asian dance group for halftime, and just so many little Asian boys and girls came out to watch. And so that just having that representation and showing that people from the Asian background, people that look like you, come from the same culture as you, can play in Division I sports is just so important.
Yeah, it's kind of cool because, go for it, Elijah.
Oh yeah, and then I agree. Like I briefly talked about in the pre-recording was like a Black Lives Matter themed football game, and that's something that bring a lot of attention to it, and actually will make us feel really good and make us feel have a sense of pride. So that would be awesome too.
It's kind of cool. And I don't mean to single out your guys as coaches, but I've gotten to know Justin Wilcox and Corey Close pretty well. They are two of the better ones that we have. I think you're really in the country for two of the reasons right here. We're seeing it on display as you're watching this, and just sort of the openness they have in discussing issues besides sports with a lot of their student athletes. Another question for you guys. Bobby had wrote in, thank you both for your brave leadership. Elijah, can you shed some light on your personal experience representing UC Berkeley, Cal football, Pac-12, and obviously yourself participating in the 2020 Black Student Athletes Summit at the University of Texas? What were you exposed to?
Yeah, so that was a really great opportunity for me and some other Black student athletes at Cal. Bobby Thompson actually was one of the guys who brought it to my attention. He works at Cal, and the Black Student Athlete Summit is basically where all Black student athletes from all around the country, they come and they talk to different mentors and professors and people who work around student athletes and give us ideas on things to help our institution be more inclusive and help us, represent ourselves in a way to, be better in the community and within our sport. And, this year, the big focus was mental health. And, we briefly touched on mental health. And like during times right now, mental health is tough because we're all in shelter in place. And so they gave us ideas and resources to talk to, and so we could learn how to cope and deal with these certain things, and also try to bring some of these resources to our schools so we can have psychologists that are Black that understands us and understand what we're going through, because a lot of these institutions don't have that. So that was a really important experience for me, and it was great to bring back to my school on ways we could be more helpful to the African American student athletes.
A couple more questions for you guys. Natalie, this one's for you. We know that a lot of Asian students will be bullied and harassed when they return to school because of COVID-19. Any advice for the Asian kids out there on how to deal with this? What can schools do to prevent the bullying and harassment?
Yeah, so something that Coach Corey always implements in our lives is just to rise above. And I don't want that to be like a passive kind of well, my whole life I've been kind of not bullied, but I've heard just people like wondering, like, just she's an Asian American playing basketball. That's so weird. But for me, I would always let my game just speak for myself and just kind of rise above. But now this is my childish answer. Now that we're in a day and age of social media, whenever I go outside, like in Texas, I'm always aware and I have my phone out and I'm ready to record anything. So just expose them, but also just keeping other people in your circle and informing and people, just keeping them accountable for their actions and what they say.
Yeah, it's a good piece of advice. I mean, I can't even help but think how different the last few weeks would have been if the situation with George Floyd, people didn't have their phones to be able to record, so that we'd have a better sense of what that interaction was like. Question for both of you guys. Elijah, I'll start with you on this one. Are you guys ever scared of the repercussions from fans or coaches that have different opinions than you guys?
Well, I'm fortunate enough to go to a school like UC Berkeley where it doesn't really matter what your opinion is. They're pretty much going to listen, but we also do have some strong opinion people around here. So, but at the same time, people are pretty much open-minded, and so our coaches and our athletics, they allow us to speak our mind, and that's something I've been really appreciative for, especially during these times. So I'm not really worried about it.
Natalie, for you, concerned?
Yes, same for me. UCLA is a really open-minded university, and I'm really thankful to be where I'm at UCLA today, because if I were to be somewhere else, if I didn't have the support from my coaches and the staff like I do at UCLA, I probably wouldn't have had the confidence to speak out about all the coronavirus stuff. So I do think that the environment that the coaches have for their players is just really important to give them confidence for speaking out of what they deem as most important to them.
Okay, a couple more questions here before we wrap up, guys. Have you ever been racially taunted during games while playing high school basketball in Texas or in college by fans or players? How do you react? If so, it looks like, Natalie, this one's for you.
Yeah, so growing up, there's a lot of people wouldn't really understand, like, they've never seen an Asian American girl playing at the level that I was. And so people are like, oh, they have an Asian girl? And then when I'd be like on the court, I just hear like whispers like, oh, I'm a guard her. This is going to be like an easy game for me. Because the stereotype is that Asians don't play basketball. Don't play sports. But I always let my game speak for itself. By the time I got to high school and I made a name for myself in the whole country, people wouldn't say anything like that anymore.
Yeah. I actually had an opportunity to talk to Jason Terry, who I know was with you at AAU as one of your coaches. He's now a coach at Arizona for the men's basketball team. We had a conversation about you. He was raving about your game. Another question for you guys. Elijah, I'll let you start here. And I actually think it's a really interesting question. Someone brought this to my attention a couple of weeks ago, and look, I'm older than you guys. I made reference to this. I'm 38. You guys are obviously still in college, and I almost felt like it was a generational thing, but I want to get your take on it. Do you guys think there is Black and Asian racial tension?
I can't say that it may be, but for me, I don't really see it as much as the Black and white tension or the Asian and white intention, or I don't really see it as much. We both are going through racism, and I don't really want to compare who may be going through more. But at the same time, me personally, I don't really see the tension, but it may be there. I just don't really see it as much.
Natalie, for you?
Kind of the same for me, but what's really important, especially since I'm not doing much right now, is just to inform my inner circle and to inform my family about what's going on, because Asian Americans, just as a whole, we're not really known to speak up. We don't want to. Our culture isn't really to speak up in this type of situation. So what I'm trying to do with my family and my friends and my community is just to inform everyone about what's going on and how our voices are just so important to the Black Lives Matter movement. And yeah.
All right, last one, guys, for you. It comes from Diana. Many thanks to both of you for sharing your personal experiences and being great leaders on these topics. My question is, what are your goals beyond your collegiate athletic careers? Elijah?
Yeah, so I definitely want to go to the NFL and have a long career and, do a lot of great things. But I also, want to continue to work on this Intercept Poverty Foundation and help struggling students overcome those financial roadblocks. And, I'm starting it now, but as I continue to grow my platform, and I want to continue to make it a nationwide program and continue to help.
By the way, but Natalie, before you answer that question, for your foundation, Elijah, is there a website if people wanted to check that out that you can just mention? I know we ran a graphic quickly, but just in case someone missed it.
It's simply interceptpovertyfoundation.com. You can go to it, check it out, see what we're doing, and yeah.
Awesome. And Natalie, what about for you? I know we'll be dribbling basketballs in the WNBA.
Oh yeah, that's the goal. I just want to stay in the game as long as I can. I've been in the game for the majority of my life, and I would love to stay in it as long as I can, whether that be in the WNBA or playing overseas. But after my playing career, I would love to get into coaching and continue the legacy that Coach Corey and Coach Wooden have started.
Oh, sticking with that UCLA brand. I love it. Coach Corey has taught you well. I know she always talks about Coach Wooden. Guys, I want to be respectful of time. And I know we had some other questions that we couldn't get to. We ran a little bit over, but thanks again for not only giving us some time, but really being great advocates, both of you guys. We've gotten to know each other a little bit, and so impressive to hear what you guys have been doing away from your respective sports. So stay healthy, please wash your hands, and good luck this upcoming season, okay?
Thanks for having us.
All right. Thank you again for all the questions, and for Natalie and Elijah for being here. A ton of inspirational work, but we're going to take a quick break, come back in about a half hour for another great panel discussion. This one is on behavior and climate change. If you log off, it's all good. You can meet us right back here. All you have to do is use that same Zoom link. So got a little bit of a break here, about 30 minutes, and we will be back with you with another session. All right. Well, welcome back, everyone. Appreciate those who have been able to check out our first couple sessions as we continue our Pac-12 Team Green virtual event series. Our third session today is going to focus on behavior and climate change. And joining me for this discussion are Maya McClendon, an ASU alum, former member of the ASU women's volleyball team, and the founder of the Sports Metaphor. Roger McClendon, the executive director of the Green Sports Alliance, a former student athlete himself playing for the University of Cincinnati's men's basketball team, and most importantly, and I know he would definitely agree with me, father of a former student athlete. Yes, he's Maya's father, and trust me, you'll be able to see it in the smile. And Dr. Paul Slovic, a psychology professor at the University of Oregon, whose research on decisions and compassion has appeared in multiple publications, including the New York Times. Now, we're going to be live for the duration of the Q&A portion as soon as this pre-recorded panel discussion is finished up. So once again, bottom right of your screen, you got the Q&A function. You can type in those questions as you listen to this pre-recorded conversation that I had with the three of our panelists a couple days ago. Well, guys, I think in a lot of ways, when we set up the sustainability conference, we knew we had COVID-19. We knew we were going to be doing this virtually, and yet there is so much social unrest right now after the killing of George Floyd. We've gotten student athlete activists that we heard from a little bit earlier. Herm Edwards kicked everything off. We got his take on what's happened in society over a few decades, and we're able to relive some of the memories, and not necessarily some good ones with him, but he did leave us on a positive. I think with the three of you, Roger, I'll start with you. Explain, and I want all of you guys to comment on this. What is the connection between COVID-19, climate change, and this social change that we are seeing right now in our country?
Yeah, those as you described it, and thanks for having me on, is the three pandemics in my mind. And if we think about it, obviously the one that's hitting us in our face right now is COVID-19. But if you think about social and racial injustice and equities, that's a 400-year-old conversation, and it's global. And so that's something that's been here, that's just been relevant based on some of the issues that have come out, and we have to address it. And the third is a slow killer in its way is climate and the effect of the change of climate. And what the intersection between all three of those, in my mind is that it affects people proportionally based on income and from a social perspective on where you are. So the folks that have the least amount of resources are going to be impacted the most. And we'll see data, hopefully, that kind of shares that and shows that. But to me, that's the relationship.
I think I used to always be the young one on all of these panels. That has now changed. You officially can have that title, but based off of what your dad just said, what resonates for you?
Absolutely. Speaking as a former student athlete and a millennial slash Gen Zer, I'm kind of right on the cusp. We are facing actually more than 3 pandemics or crises. Obviously, climate change, COVID, racism, unemployment, and it's just so heavy right now that it's hard to see the connection between all of them. But everything is connected. So when I think about the connection of all of these things we're going through, it really seems that it stems from the prioritization of the preservation of a fundamental system or idea that isn't sustainable within itself. And when you get down to it, it's all kind of linking to the same causality. And so first, it's very hard to get down to those reasons because it requires a ton of education. But as a millennial, we're starting to feel the weight of the collapse of something that hasn't been sustainable. So in my opinion, it's all stemming from the same thing.
Dr. Slovic, you have unique perspective, and I can't wait to hear some of the things that you have to say with your research and other things about how the brain operates. But of those 3 verticals that Roger and Maya just referenced, what's the connection in your mind between those 3?
Well, I think there's an overarching question related to all 3 of these issues, and that is, why does it take so long to react? In every one of these topics, whether it's COVID-19 or climate change or racial injustice, we've had information about this, going back, and we, in every case, we react too slowly. And these are different time frames, of course, but I'm going to talk a little bit about that, and from the perspective of a psychologist who tries to understand when we get information about what's going on in the world, how do we process it, and why do we react strongly sometimes, and why do we ignore it in other cases? And we know a lot about that from psychological research, a lot of it having been done within the Pac-12 universities. So that's what I'm going to focus on. Why does it take us so long to wake up?
Well, it sounds awesome. So I'm going to actually let you have the floor now because you have some slides that illustrate some of the points that you were just making. Yeah,
thank you. So as an academic, I can't do anything without my slides in front of me, and I hope they'll help you follow along with what I'm talking about here. So I do have a title. It says, what the COVID-19 curve teaches us about climate change. And the story is, act now before it's too late. So my first slide references a book that came out in 2011 by Daniel Kahneman, Nobel Prize winner, called Thinking Fast and Slow. And he talks about the way our brain works, how we process information, and we do it in 2 ways. One is kind of with a fast, intuitive, gut feeling type of process. The other is kind of slowly and analytically, scientifically. And these 2 ways of thinking are bouncing off each other in our brain, influencing the way we react to information. So kind of everything I'll be talking about relates to this, and mostly to the fast thinking, which is our default mode. The brain is lazy, so if we think we can deal with something quickly and easily through our gut, we'll do that, as opposed to doing equations and formulae and so forth. So let's look at COVID-19. The key aspect of that is very central to combating it is that it spreads exponentially. And this happens when each person who's infected infects more than one other person. So here on the screen, I put a question for you that illustrates this exponential growth. Suppose that the coronavirus cases are increasing as indicated below for 5 consecutive days. So on the screen, we see that day 1, there are 3 cases. Day 2, there are 7. Day 3, there are 20. Day 4, there's 55. And day 5, there's 148. So at this rate of increase, how many cases will there be on day 10? So I'll give you a few seconds to think about that. Make a quick guess, use your fast thinking, and keep that in your mind. How many of you estimated more than 20,000 cases? My guess is that very few of you did that, because that's where the sequence is going. At the rate of the growth that you see on the 5 days, by day 10 it'll be over 20,000. That's exponential growth. And so if you look at the next slide from the New York Times, it kind of illustrates the way this happens. You see how one person is infected, they infect 2 others, who infect 2 others, and you see that after kind of 5 generations of infections, already you're up to 64 on this. This is where each person infects 2. So if we go to the next slide, we see that this is actual data on the spread of coronavirus in Louisiana from the time their first cases began. You see that the curve starts flat and then it starts going up steeper and steeper. Even more dramatically, we have the curve for the United States between January 21st and March 31st. And there you see this kind of what looks to be a long flat period, and then suddenly very steeply it rises to hundreds of thousands of cases. Now, actually, the part that looks flat is not really flat. It just looks flat because the scale it goes up to 300,000. But if you look at the next slide and you look over to the right-hand panel, you see what was happening in that flat period. The early growth, it was growing exponentially, but it just looked small at the time, and then suddenly it was huge. And so that's the nature of exponential growth. It sneaks up on you. Everything looks fine until suddenly it isn't. So if you look at the next slide from the Washington Post, the headline, it took 3 months to reach 100,000 coronavirus cases worldwide. The second 100,000 took only 12 days. That's the insidious nature of the way this spreads with exponential growth. And when we think fast, when we use our easy, our gut feelings about things, the mind doesn't understand what's going on. Everything looks fine until suddenly it isn't. So the lesson here is we need to listen to experts who did understand exponential growth and were warning us to act fast and cut off the spread of the virus. And most of the world acted too slowly, and hundreds of thousands of lives were lost. This is very dramatically illustrated in the next slide. And it shows you 3 patterns. The curve that goes up to the high level, 63,000 deaths in a period of time. This is U.S. deaths. You see, this is the reality. And you see, again, it was flat up until a certain period of time, and then it took off and went to 63,000. What this graph shows is that if we in the US had acted a week earlier to kind of shut things down and close up things and social distance and wear masks, it would have only been 29,000 instead of 65,000. And if we had acted 2 weeks earlier, it would have only been 11,000 instead of 65. So the key thing about when you're facing something that's growing exponentially is to act now before it's too late. So that's a lesson for coronavirus, which we still have to pay attention to. But now let's look at climate change. And something similar is happening on a slightly, obviously climate change is different from coronavirus. The time scale is different, but still the damages from climate change happen exponentially. Carbon dioxide emissions grow exponentially. Ocean warming, the polar ice melting and sea level rise, extreme temperatures, storms, floods, and drought. This is all happening on an exponential growth scale. And right now we're still on the relatively flat part of the curve, while everything still feels okay. I mean, in some parts of the world it's not okay, but most of us still think that there's nothing much happening here, and we can sort of we don't have to act now. If you look at the next curve, which shows the melting of the ice in Antarctica, you see exponential growth happening here. This is going, not growth, but it's a decline. It's a reduction in the ice, in the depth of the ice. And you see that it was fairly flat for a while, and now it's getting steeper and steeper. We lose more and more ice every year, and that will only go so long until there won't be any ice left. But you see how fast it's happening. The next slide talks about the sea level rise. The headline is Earth's oceans are rising at a fastest rate in the past 28 centuries. And along with that are the impacts of all this. So the next slide from the New York Times says that mass extinctions are accelerating, says the scientists. Extinction of species are accelerating. And then finally, my last slide on this demonstration of exponential growth with climate is from The Guardian. It says from a NASA report, Earth is warming at a pace unprecedented in 1,000 years. So the pace is speeding up. So the message here is act now before it's too late. And what does that mean? It means to communicate the impacts of climate change with stories and visual imagery that are more emotionally meaningful and more powerful than the numerical data that we're getting, because fast thinking reacts stronger to stories and images. We need to pay attention to experts who think slowly and scientifically, and don't expect people to give up the comforts and conveniences that a climate harmful lifestyle bring to us. That government and industry has to take the leadership here. It has to must work to develop new ways to meet our needs with less damage to the environment and with more economic incentives and strict regulations to kind of give us a push and a shove where we need it. So just briefly about how we communicate information in a world where we're thinking fast. Well, the next slide talks about the way that the scientists communicate with us, which, this is reality. It talks about sea level rise, and it gives centimeters rise and so forth, a lot of data, and that's the reality. But that doesn't play well with our gut feelings. It kind of bounces over the top of our heads. What we need is visual imagery of how like a coastline that we understand and have some connection with is going to be impacted by those numbers. So the next few slides come from a story in the Boston Globe, which was talking about how climate change threatens Donald Trump's Mar-a-Lago estate in Florida. So you see a picture of the estate. The next slide shows how a sea level rise of 3 inches is going to encroach upon that. And then the third slide shows a little bit further down along in time, you see Mar-a-Lago going under the waves of the ocean. I mean, those kind of images, you connect with us better than just saying that there's going to be so many centimeters or inches of sea level rise. So the last point, again, which I think ties together the various themes we'll be talking about this morning, is inequality. So as Roger mentioned, inequality pervades both COVID-19, where people of color and other groups are impacted far more severely than others. It also pervades climate change, where we know that climate change is going to hurt people in the Southern Hemisphere and other areas more than others. And so the next slide I'll show you, where it says, op-ed written with my son Scott, says climate change is genocide for island nations. And so whereas Donald Trump and the wealthy people in the world can protect themselves more from climate change. I mean, Trump could build a wall around Mar-a-Lago to hold back the oceans. But people living in the Pacific Islands don't have those resources and aren't able to build a wall. And what this editorial points to is that already there are nations that are going extinct, where genocide is happening because people are going to have to abandon their ancestral homelands because of the rising sea levels, the destruction of their fishing habitats, and so forth. So it is happening now, and with inequality in the way it happens, not everyone can protect themselves from it. So I hope that these ideas will help us tie the rest of the discussion together and show how the study of how our mind processes information, this kind of study, which is done throughout the Pac-12 university system, may help us understand better what we're up against. Thank you.
Dr. Slovic, really appreciate your insight in that presentation. And I have a lot of questions, and I want to get Roger and Maya involved as well. And keep in mind, we're going to be taking live questions coming up in just a couple of minutes. In the bottom right of your screen, there's that Q&A function. Feel free to start loading up those questions for Dr. Slovic, Maya, and Roger. We'll get to those coming up here. But Roger, based off of some of the things that Dr. Slovic said, I think two things resonate for me, sort of this idea that you almost need things to kind of smack you in the face for you to realize that they're really bad. And also the power of storytelling that can really change and influence the way the mind processes information. What stood out for you, and what sort of resonates from what Dr. Slovic was just speaking about?
Yeah, I think this reiterates that most people follow, don't follow science, and most people follow like sports. You will say that's a statistic. And the thing about it is, to make it relevant, to make it more actionable, to make it more impactful. Those are kind of the three themes that I want to come back to. And so this whole idea that language matters, and, how does it really impact me, just like with COVID-19 or racism, or this idea of climate change. If it's not relevant in your life, and if you don't clearly see the connection and the images that we talk about in the storytelling that can impact you to action, then you don't act. Whether it's fast thinking or slow thinking, you just don't act. So I think it's a combination of making this relevant, and why is this important? And I think that's really a key part. So that awareness and how we want to tell that story and how we want to engage people becomes really extremely important to move to action.
How do you make it relevant?
Well, I think, as we were talking about, is the storytelling. So, not until we saw the video of the, over 8.5 minutes or so, 8:56, I can't remember the exact.
8:46, 8 minutes and 46 seconds.
Of someone, literally killing another individual almost for no reason, do people emotionally get tied to that? So that is a story in itself, real life. But we can relive that over and over. I'm sure Herm told his story. I can tell my story, and we can look back in history from lynchings to other things. So this institutional racism concept, why does that, have anything to do with me? Is what the mass people, people are saying. But the heart of the conversation is around justice and equality. And human rights. And so I think that's the same thing when we relate that to climate change. Most people want to continue their lifestyles on an individual basis, but the question is on collective. And so where is the leadership? Elevate the leadership into where it can have impact. And so that has to be at the government level, that has to be at the corporation level, that has to be at institutional level, of sources of power that can make change. Now we can change ourselves individually, but until we have that collective and that leadership at that level is where we're going to make significant impact. And that's what needs to happen.
Maya, for me, I look at your generation, without sounding like the old guy, your generation, but at the same time, I mean, look, I follow you on Instagram, right? We pick up the phone, and that's a form of storytelling in a lot of ways. How does your generation, so to speak, how do they use their platforms and social media to influence mass change?
Absolutely. So something that's so significant about my generation and the invention and popularization of social media is we all feel like we have a voice. And I think that is something so powerful for youth, because you feel so powerless. You feel like, what can I do to tell my story or influence policy or anything? And, seeing that video of George Floyd, that is one of the best examples of putting yourself in someone's shoes. I mean, just the way that the angle of the camera, where you could see the expressions and you could hear emotional reactions, storytelling doesn't hit like that. You know, going to these conferences and sharing what your perspective, that only gets so far, but having a tool, like my dad said, that you can watch over and over, where you can see expression and you can see the humanity in someone else, that's what sparks change.
Sure.
And to go with Dr. Slovic's points, everything looks fine until it doesn't. That happens for people at different times, right? And when you are checking your Facebook or your Instagram every hour, you hit that realization quicker. And I think the conversations that I've had, it's really about what can you do to spark that awareness, and do it within your own circle and your own voice. And so that storytelling has, again, it's kind of like the exponential growth. It's one person shares with another person, shares with another person. Just like COVID, there's an opportunity to teach and learn on an exponential level, and on that depth of true empathy. So we're getting to a point where it's almost impossible if you're not aware. You know, if you're not aware, you're intentionally looking away. So that's where accountability can start coming in.
Here's the issue, and it's not with you, Maya. It's, I think, this, whatever the group is. But last year I got to moderate a lot of discussions around climate change and things, actionable items. And yet I don't know, like there's generations that really just, I think it's a small group of people that focus in on the things that they can do to affect large mass change. And yet when I talked to Herm Edwards a little bit earlier, and everyone got to see that interview, Herm made reference to the youth in this country that is now driving. It's like it was in the civil rights movement. As he described it to me, it's a youth movement that changes it. We're seeing that on the social side with regard to racism in this country, and yet we don't see it with climate change. Why is there such a dramatic disconnect on two subjects that are vitally important? And I'm not trying to rank one over the other, but it just seems like the youth movement's not really there on climate change.
Absolutely. I would completely agree. It's because you don't have that humanity connection yet. It's hard to see those people who are, getting shot or being strangled to death. You see the humanity in it. You can make the direct link, and it's a lot easier to have those actionable items there. But I mean, if you look at the slides, you don't see the humanity in the shores rising. You need to hear from the experts who are the people living in it. What we need to see are the videos of, like, Hurricane Katrina. When I was in 8th grade, but I remember it stuck with me so much, seeing the humanity suffer out of that. And we aren't seeing that as much. So I think that's the biggest difference, in my opinion. If people can't see themselves within it, if there's not that humanity connection, it's not a priority on our list of crises, which is unfortunate. But I think that this injustice, the Black Lives Matter movement, is, like I said, so related to the same root that you can really snowball the climate change initiatives off of what's happening.
Dr. Slovic, based off of what Roger and Maya were just discussing, and you on your slides, and we're going to circle back to the storytelling aspect of it. Maya makes a great point. There's this humanity connection that seems like it's missing on the climate change. That's certainly there from a racial divide right now in this country. How do you make that shift? What's it going to take to turn things so that people are focusing in on some tragedy around climate change?
That's the problem, is that climate change is not one thing. It's got many different facets and impacts, and it's kind of diffuse. It's not one event, and also it's an extreme of what is natural. I mean, climate. We've always had climate and weather, and it's gone. We've had big storms and hot days in the past. So it doesn't stand out as something all that different. It's sneaking up on us through this exponential curve. So it's easy. We're still on the flat part. It's easy to deny that there's anything we have to do about it. And the other thing is that the solutions are not pleasant for us. That is, we are addicted to the use of energy in a way that is climate harmful. We want our air conditioning in the summer and our heating in the winter, and we want to be able to drive our cars and fly in planes and use a lot of energy that way. And it's it's hard. We don't want to abandon that. So even though as we have become aware that climate change is a problem, and more Americans and more people around the world recognize now that it's a problem and it's human caused, but they don't like the solution. They want a solution where they can continue, where we can continue to do what we want to do in a way that's less harmful to the climate. So it's not going to be easy to wean us away and change. I mean, we've done things now during the pandemic. We've reduced our energy use, but hopefully that'll be over soon. And as soon as it is, we'll probably bounce right back. So that, I think, shows the need for leadership at the top, for government and industry recognizing that we're not going to voluntarily do the right thing to make it easier for us to be climate friendly, to give us, products that are more energy efficient and ways to gain the things that we really don't want to give up at a less harmful cost. And that'll take ingenuity and creativity in industry and science to do that, and government has to also provide leadership, provide incentives, and also regulations that will punish us if we do the wrong thing. So I think that's the challenge.
I think there's also this idea of, go for it, Maya.
Sorry, I'd like to kind of snowball off of that, and something that kind of ties in all three of these crises. It's really about accountability, and accountability in terms of those who are in privilege, because what privilege means I don't have to think about it not happening or not being available to me. I don't have to worry. And because of the foundation of American culture, overconsumption and more equals better mentality is what's making everything so unsustainable and so unequal. And the thought process of, I don't want to give anything up, that comes from a place of privilege, because there are way more people who are like, I don't even have that in the first place, and I think that accountability of exposing that and saying, it's been unrealistic. It kind of happened this way, right? You had all this healthcare and everything set up for you, or, you had all these opportunities set up for you, but in reality, that's why it's unsustainable, because not everyone can have that. So it's also bringing people down to a place of realistic, ideals of equality, truly. So when I think about, policy changes and everything, I think the number one thing on the list is accountability and the regulations that you said. I think that has to be number one, because I don't think that's been enforced to the extent that it should have been this entire time.
I think it's a really good point. Maya, would you be cool if I said to you, in this hypothetical world, there's still competition, everyone has to compete to get whatever the victory is, the more resources internally, but it really comes down to, are we competing fairly? Because I think there's an argument for some who will say, you know what, like I worked really hard. I've been doing X, Y, and Z. Like, I want to be in a position where I have some of the privilege that you made reference to. Why do I have to sort of downgrade? And I think maybe the bigger picture point is, you maybe got a couple of advantages that some of the people you're competing with didn't have. As long as the competition was fair, to me, it almost feels like that would be an acceptable way to look at things.
Yeah. Yeah. Go ahead, Mary.
No, go ahead.
No, I was going to interject to say, are you starting at the same place? And, if we really start to look at institutional racism and, where we started from, obviously we haven't started from the same place. Yeah. And so as you think about, rewarding folks for their work, absolutely, but understand that the starting point is much different. And then when you broaden that out into the economic side of what you're talking about, as far as equality, we know we have some major hurdles to overcome. So the data is there, to Doctor's point. The scientists know we have the solutions, we have innovation and technology. So why are we not progressing? That's the question we should be asking. Why are we not implementing some of these things? If we know we have laws that don't support being just, and we have police brutality that's not justified, why is it continuing to happen? And that's why we say the 400-year-old pandemic, just like the climate change pandemic, and just like how we've pushed this pandemic further than we maybe could have if we would have reacted quicker, what's holding us up? And I think it's leadership and accountability. And I think those are the two things that we need to focus on. How do we change that?
All right, we got live questions coming up here, and I do encourage everyone, bottom of your screen, there's that little Q&A function. We're going to get to some of those questions coming up in just a couple of minutes here. Roger, you made reference to it a little bit earlier when we started this session, sort of this idea of 3 different lanes that we could go down. Part of it is also actionable items. I want to give you an opportunity to discuss some of those verticals.
Yeah, so I talked about what relevant, and then Maya kind of jumped on the same concept as we heard from Dr. Slovic. And so why is this not more relevant to people? Why is racism not more relevant? So we need to make that relevant. And how do we do that? So we got to understand what the data sets are. We got to share that empathy in a more realistic way, so people are emotionally connected, not just mentally and academically connected. The third is, what is the action? How do we make this more actionable? So changing laws, changing leaders, and bringing everybody to a focus of what's important. And then it goes into the impact, because we can talk about this, we can have webinars, but if there's no change and no impact, then we haven't made progress. So to make that progress, we need frameworks. We need, data. We need to measure. We need to understand how we progress by having objective measures across those categories. And that's the only way you improve something, is by to understand measuring it. And so I think those 3 areas we can build on and go into details of what those frameworks might look like, what those targets and set points should be across all those categories of pandemics that we're working on. We can't feel that we can jump back into away from social distancing if everybody else is going to accelerate that back up exponentially and be sick. So we need to have measurement, so that's just an example. But I think those are the 3 areas we need to kind of attack.
Can I
go for it, Dr. Slovic. Yeah.
Yeah, so I think that's very, very important what Roger said. One of the things that we've found in our research on when people are responding to their feelings has to do with the feeling of that you're effective in what you're doing. So even when we become aware of something and we want to help, then the question is, okay, now what can I do that makes a difference? Yeah. And if you feel that your actions aren't going to matter, then even though you're concerned about the problem, you turn your attention to something else where you can make a difference. And one of the things that is strange about the way our minds work is that sometimes if we can't do everything, or we are aware that our actions are aren't going to help a little bit, we feel that that's not good enough. It's like a drop in the bucket, even when it's meaningful. So we have to appreciate the fact that even what we think are small actions can make a difference. If enough people are doing small things, it adds up. So just because you can't fix it all, you can't solve climate change, you can't solve racism, that doesn't mean that your actions won't matter.
I think it's a great point. It reminds me of a book, The Compound Effect, that I read years ago about these small actions that could lead to larger change. Roger, you were speaking before, and you said something, and this might sound like an idiotic question, but we started this session and we said, hey, there's 3 kind of pandemics going on, right? It's the climate change, it's COVID-19, and then it's systemic racism that we're dealing with in this country. Do you think that the COVID-19 pandemic has in some ways shed more of a light on racism? Like, I don't know, if we're all not sheltering in place, if we're not dealing with quarantine, not ready to rock and roll and have some sort of sense of normalcy, I think the video with George Floyd, it still resonates, but are we seeing this influx? I mean, Roger, this, we've seen tragedies over the years similar to George Floyd, and it hasn't led to the protests and the things that we're seeing right now in this country. Did it take COVID-19 to even shed more of a light on what's happening with racism?
I think you can, culminate that into kind of a perfect storm kind of scenario. And in addition to that, add what Maya's been talking about around the power of social media in that generation and younger, on how they get information. And so I think, yeah, there's were some very unique things happening with COVID that, you know, maybe with the pent up demand and everything going on, allowed people to really want to come out and express themselves, especially the younger generation. So I definitely think it had an impact on how people responded.
There's also one other lane. Go for it, Maya. I actually wanted to ask you something else about mental health, but I know you wanted to comment on what your dad just said.
Absolutely. And I'll kind of tie that in. I think what was not originally part of the narrative of social distancing was what social isolation really does to the psyche, especially to adolescents who are kind of dealing with like role confusion and trying to really figure out their place in society. In addition to a lot of stressors like not having money in a capitalistic society, it's very harmful. I think people have said it all the time. We're the most connected, yet we're the most lonely. And our number one tool is our phones. That's how we communicate. That's how we feel the presence of others. And when our timelines are flooded with something so heart-wrenching, that is exactly why it's been set ablaze, because people can't look away. I know, speaking on my behalf and my immediate friends and my allies, we haven't let up on trying to spread awareness. And so you can kind of see the drop off of some people as things start opening up, because our coping mechanisms before COVID were going out and having fun and connecting with friends and finding a bunch of distractions. So without those distractions, you almost have nowhere to turn. And it does play into the mental health of our generation, of older generations, everyone, when you're kind of bombarded with really heavy news. But it also exposes intention as well. And that's kind of what I wanted to explain a little bit earlier. You know, people, like Dr. Slovic said, people want to have some sort of sense of good doing, or, you know, they're contributing. But if you don't understand the intention of our system, then you kind of, it's everyone's going in different directions, right? So we live in a very individualistic and independent and competitive environment. When we really get down to it, some people might think that the right thing to do is to prioritize money or property over humanity. So I think that is being exposed even more so, and that makes people uncomfortable. So as things open up, you'll see that these distractions and, you know, going back outside, it will have an effect on social awareness with COVID and racial injustice.
Dr. Slovic, does that make sense to you? What, in terms of the research and some of the things that you've been reading about, experiencing yourself, do you think what Maya is making reference to does resonate?
Absolutely. I think also we have to realize that the way inequality affects us, that, you know, as long as people feel threatened and insecure in their own lives, it's hard for them to be charitable towards others. You know, we kind of retreat, and we feel we're in a fight for our own lives, our status, that the world that we grew up in is slipping away from us, and we are becoming disadvantaged. And then that's not a climate where people are friendly to one another. We see a lot of cruelty in the United States, you know, in all different directions, and I think it is fostered partly by, well, maybe to a large extent by from the top by our leadership, but it also it resonates with people who feel themselves that they are being treated unfairly, and so they are looking for ways to kind of recover their sense of security. So I think we have that to really make progress, all people have to be treated, you know, decently, and feel that they have opportunity, and, you know, that way that they'll be secure in themselves and can reach out and help other people as well.
Before we get to these questions, and I promise we will get to them, bottom right of your screen, the Q&A function, we're going to get through as many as we can here. Roger, I'm going to put you on the spot, and it's a question for all of you, so I want you all to answer this question. If someone is at home right now in their living room, they're watching this session. What's the one thing that you want them to take away from this discussion, the research that Dr. Slovic said, the actionable items that you made reference to, Maya, from an isolation perspective that can lead to some reform? What's the one thing that you hope someone takes away?
Yeah, that they can make a difference, that it is not insurmountable to deal with any three of those pandemics, that, they can, like Maya said, they can go have a conversation, educate themselves, and be an activist. And it doesn't mean sacrificing the things that you have to be able to do it. And I think that's the fallacy and the myth that we have, is that you have to give up your lifestyle necessarily to help others. And I think with innovation and technology, that's the key. We're such a entrepreneurial, enterprise-driven, innovation-driven society. And I think that's the beauty. I love Tesla, for example. They've done some things that show that you can have performance and efficiency. You don't have to give up your speed and your look and your luxury, but you can, also make sure that it's a renewable, sustainable type of innovation that you can use.
I wish we had this conversation about $700 ago, and the stock price that's now hit 1,000. But we can discuss that. That's another session and another webinar that we can do. Dr. Slovic and Maya, I want to give you an opportunity to chime in on that as well.
Sure. So I think one important lesson that I and others have learned through our research is that when you see the data of things that are harming large numbers of people, don't allow that to make you numb and insensitive. When you see the statistics, try to think about the humanity, the individual lives beneath the surface of the statistics. The human beings that these numbers represent. Because if you just look at the number, you won't get it. It'll just be a number. You have to think about people as individuals, and then respect the fact that if there's a lot of people being harmed, that's even more important for you to act as well as you can.
Absolutely. I think from my perspective, it's definitely a culmination of both what Dr. Slovic and my dad said. Number one, you can make a difference. I think that our generation is just so fearless in terms of using our voice to spark change, and even just the hashtags and the subtweeting and everything, we've made huge changes. And I don't know if you guys are on Instagram, but people post all the time what we've accomplished in the past month. So ultimately, it's about changing your mindset from individualism to collectivism, because at the end of the day, we are all the same. Really are all the same, and that's what we're really striving for. It's not unrealistic to say, oh, we want civil rights for all of us. It's just to be civil, and it takes all of us to get there. So checking your privilege and thinking, okay, well, what can I do to understand how I can contribute to the collective? Because it doesn't require me, giving up everything. It might just be driving to a more sustainable lifestyle.
Yeah, I love that idea of individualism to collectivism. I think that's a great way of describing it. Guys, I know we have those live questions that we'll get to right now. Okay, we're all just kind of punching up our video here. And once again, at the bottom right of your screen, there's that little Q&A tab, and you can just fire in those questions. If you told me it was going to be a race to see who would sign or put their video up first, I actually thought I would win Roger. I would have had Maya win that, be number 2 in that race. But well done. Quick on the trigger, and you're ready for some of these questions. So we will hammer through a bunch of them. I will start with Ann, and I think it's in reference to a comment that I made when you and I were discussing something. It said, I think it's unfair to say that there isn't a youth movement in climate change. There have been hundreds of thousands of high schoolers and college students across the world joining Greta Thunberg's climate strikes. It's taken a backseat to COVID and the Black Lives Matter movement in recent months, but was one of the big stories in 2019. I'll let you guys comment on it. I know I had sort of indicated that. I understand what Ann is saying, but I got to be honest with you guys. Like, I've been watching the news the last couple of weeks, last couple of months, and it's all day, every day on one or two topics. It's either Black Lives Matter and that movement and the protest, or COVID. And I don't recall a time in my life where it's been consistently one story or two stories like this. To me, you know, you say to me climate change, like I'm thinking Al Gore, to be honest with you. Like I understand there's a youth movement, but it doesn't seem to have the same effect that we're seeing with other movements. But you guys are the experts, so I'll let you chime in on that.
Yeah, I'll speak to Greta just real quick, and then I'll pass it to Maya. Yeah, so you know, Climate Week last year in New York City, she did an amazing job pushing that leadership and getting on the UN's agenda and really going, you know, fearlessly at leadership and demanding that they take accountability and that we're not going fast enough. So yes, indeed, there is a lot of youth empowered like Greta to push that agenda. But as you said, and even today, it's fallen kind of, you know, in the background of what's going on. And so we need to continue to make the conversation relevant. And I think the youth are there to support that movement as well.
Yeah, I would definitely, oh, go ahead. Yeah, I would definitely agree. Speaking for my generation, that's all I can really speak for. I think that we have historically been such a huge and loud voice in terms of climate change. I wouldn't say that the youth isn't doing anything. I would just have to agree. In the last few months, it has been pretty much put on the back burner as a different conversation because it's not as in your face as humanity issues. It's hard, like I said, it's hard to put a face to that movement. So I know there's a lot of push. There always has been a push for the youth because we're more connected. We see the reality of how we are going to be directly affected in our children. But in terms of the push that we've made through social media and policy change, it just really hasn't compared because there are more immediate pressing issues that are kind of at the forefront of the crises that we're facing.
In our area, Eugene, Oregon, there are a group of dedicated young people who joined with other youth to launch a lawsuit, you know, against government and industry for, you know, threatening their future, and it's called Our Children's Trust. And it's amazing the degree to which that has been blocked in the courts by forces who don't want to, you know, let things happen and deal with the climate crisis. So I think there are a lot of young people, but the road is not easy, and there's tremendous amount of political power and wealth that is being put into, you know, anti-climate science to kind of denial, because again, there are many who don't like the solutions, which they think will be harmful economically to them. So that's another element. And again, that's the political side of it that has to be changed.
Kevin chimed in with a question. Just like there's an opportunity to connect climate change to extreme weather, there's an opportunity to connect climate change, racism, and justice together. I use sports to find common ground with people, but do each of you have an idea or an example for how to connect climate change with racial justice?
Yeah, I'll jump in here. Yeah, it's a good topic. With the Green Sports Alliance, we've expanded our focus. And you think at the highest level of the United Nations, you have a framework called the Sustainable Development Goals. And those goals talk about social and environmental topics and issues. And so through that framework and through our leadership, we're working with leagues and teams, and they're trying to attack it on both sides, the social and the environmental side. And so I think sports is kind of that nexus that can attack both and can bring awareness to both as we look at bringing sports back online. Not only how we design, build, and operate and maintain, you know, large scale facilities like arenas. I always like to use Mercedes-Benz Stadium as an example, where they're a LEED Platinum facility. And at the same time, that leadership with Arthur Blank, who's the owner, is very compassionate about the humanitarian efforts, you know, led by Dr. Martin Luther King to make sure that you have equal rights and equal justice for folks. So I think they're not mutually exclusive. You can definitely do both.
Yeah, I'm a huge fan of the Share the Mic Now movement. I was able to participate on a couple of Share the Mics with a couple of Olympians where they gave me an opportunity to give my perspective on racial justice issues. I think especially in the world of sports, there are a lot of athletes who come from lower income areas who are directly affected by climate change that affects their sports, whether it's their playing facilities or, you know, their air quality. Share the Mic Now is a perfect example how people can use their platform to give that perspective, to again put a face to climate change, to explain directly that link between climate change and racial justice, because there's a disproportionate effect on lower income health in terms of climate change. So movements like that, where you have an opportunity to use different platforms to share stories of direct connections.
Okay, I will throw in another question, sort of tags off that last comment, Maya, that you made as well. Ariel had written in about raising the profile of that youth movement. How can we make sure stories about climate and systemic racism remain as a movement rather than a moment?
Absolutely. I mean, it's just about keeping the momentum, keeping the conversation relevant, and really establishing movements like Share the Mic Now. It can't just stop with a few people sharing their platform in this moment. It's okay, how can we turn this into a podcast? How can we turn this into, keep expanding into innovative ways to give opportunity to see things with your eyes and through all of your senses, really bringing people into the community to see real life examples of what's going on. And those can be led by, you know, Greta Thunberg and the youth movement, because we've been so connected. We've been able to swipe through a million examples. And I think continuing to use our tools to really highlight that and keep it going.
So what we've seen in research, something kind of parallel to the impact that the George Floyd video had, is that when an event like this takes place, it wakes people up and creates a window of opportunity to act. So specifically, something that my colleagues and I studied was during the Syrian war from 2011 to 2015, some 250,000 people were killed, mostly innocent people, a lot of civilians and so forth. And no one cared. And then that changed overnight when the photo of the little boy on the beach went viral around the world. And suddenly people woke up and they started to search for Syria refugees on Google, and they started to donate to organizations that cared for refugees, big time, you know, just overnight, a dramatic impact. But then we watched that, and it lasted for about a month. And it slowly, then it faded out, and then the plight of the Syrian people and the Syrian refugees was no better off than before. And so what I think that taught us that's relevant here is that when an event like this takes place and wakes you up, it gives you a window of opportunity when you're connected, you're emotionally connected to the problem, and you want to do something. And then the question is, well, what can I do? For the Syrian case, it was donate to the Red Cross. People could do that, and they did that big time. Then the question is, okay, now what else can I do to solve the problem, the refugee problem? Well, both people and their governments didn't have many solutions. And so if you don't have a place to go with it, then you tune out and you go somewhere else. So you got this window of opportunity, and that's what we have now after the George Floyd unfortunate murder. So now we have to act, and if we have something meaningful to do, then we'll keep going. And one of the things that's important is that to fight this sense of inefficacy that we may have, that, you know, what can we do as an individual, is to join forces with organizations that are dedicated to this. You know, multiply your impact by joining good organizations that are doing things that fit your values, and supporting them with your labor, with your money, and that's a way to amplify your own ability to make a difference.
Yeah, I definitely.
Go for it.
I just want to reinforce. I think that's an excellent comments by Dr. Slovic and Maya, and that's where the momentum from the protest to real change has to continue to go. Is that we have to be very organized. We have to understand what institutional racism really is, and how do you deal with that power structure, because it is a power structure. And if we don't act at that level where we can sustain the movement, we'll be right back where we were, the day before it happened, and that's where we don't want to be. And so organizations that have dedicated and they have their missions and visions steeped in this, this is not a new thing. Like we said, this is 400 years of what we've been going through. And the question is, why don't we have the progress that we want? And so we do have to capitalize on this moment, and we have to authentically hold leadership accountable, all the way from corporations to educational institutions, all the way down the line.
We are running short on time. There's more questions to get to. I'm going to direct each question to one person so that we can sort of steamroll some of it. And Roger, this one I think is kind of on a tee, tailor-made for you, from Diana, about live events, generally speaking, really wasteful. Food waste, energy output, traffic congestion, the list goes on and on. Who are the leaders, Roger, that can be better enforce positive change in sports sustainability so we're better socially responsible leaders?
Yeah, there's quite a few leaders. I would say, the Portland Trailblazers has a history of leadership in that area, in how they design their stadium. Events like college football playoffs, the CFP championship events, they have their Playoff Green initiative, along with their Extra Yard for Teachers, that steeped in their mission to make sure that their events are sustainable, that they're looking at offsetting the transportation of players, and typically the fans, engaging them to educate them around what they can do around reducing the impacts. And, I think it's that tough challenge of what are you willing to give up and how you can change your behavior. You still want to have fun and enjoy the excitement of the game, but how you do it in a responsible way. And I think that is growing as we want to get back to the field and get ready to play. The first thing is that we get back safely and understand how we mitigate COVID-19 as we start to ramp up. And then secondly, I think we can't ignore also carrying the flag and the mantra of making sure that everything we do is in the light of sustainability too. So, and at some point we'll move from sustainability to regenerative, as I have some of the leadership folks on my board talk about regenerative, and we'll get there through education and through innovation.
I got two more here, one for Dr. Slovic and one for you, Maya. So for Dr. Slovic, how do we get people past the human thinking pattern that small contributions don't matter? What are effective ways to convince people to make small changes that really will add up to make a difference?
That's a great question, and that's one of the things that my colleagues and I are trying to research after we found out that people were dissuaded when they couldn't do it all. And the first thing is to make people aware of the tricks our minds play on us that discourage us from acting when we can make a difference. So hopefully knowledge will do that. There are stories that illustrate this, even children's stories about how you can make a difference. Or we don't have time to get into those, but there's some very powerful stories that wake you up to the fact that, hey, yeah, every little bit helps. So I think the first step is to be aware of the tricks our minds play on us, to be continually aware of that and fight back against us by vowing that if we can do something, we should do it, even if we can't fix the whole problem.
I think it's a really good point. We got another question for you, Maya. Your new mental health app for athletes, Time Out, was built to overcome the obstacles that cause mental health disparities that many athletes face. What's the tie-in between mental health and behavior change?
Absolutely. So I think the narrative really is about educating yourself. And I think a huge theme, especially during my experience as a student athlete, there wasn't a huge emphasis on psychoeducation. You play the game and you learn all the fundamentals and you practice over and over and over again. But who's really teaching you mental health and providing you with psychoeducation so that you can have an awareness of where you stand and your abilities to improve within that space, especially as athletes. We're pretty headstrong and we have strong morals, and we really want to push to as much self-help as possible, and having a tool to do so is essential. Mainly psychoeducation and understanding where you stand in terms of clinical and reliable testing services.
Guys, I can't thank you enough for the time. Super informative. And I apologize. I know there were more questions to get to, but I do need to be respectful of time. And we have run out of time right now during this panel discussion. I don't want to speak for you guys if you're willing to stay on. I know people are capable of sending you messages through the chat function as well. So encourage a few of the folks, if I didn't get to your question, maybe you can fire those off individually to Roger, Maya, and Dr. Slovic. But guys, thank you once again for your time. Awesome discussion. And one last break for today. So be sure to tune back in 4 p.m. Pacific time this afternoon. We got a reception of sorts. Great dialogue. It's Bill Walton, so he'll do some of the talking, and some of his friends that are going to be with him, they'll all have a conversation. We now have a special cash prize giveaway from Phase 3 Sports, and I love doing the giveaways. $500 to use towards fan engagement with sustainability initiatives. So excited to announce today's winner, University of Washington. It's Damon Eklund. So congratulations. We're going to send you an email confirmation of the prize and look forward to seeing how you utilize it on your campus. Also, as a registered attendee of our virtual event, you're going to be able to receive access to our Pac-12 Team Green virtual event bag presented by Ripple, which has special offers, discount codes, coupons, resources, plenty of stuff for you guys to enjoy. So you'll get that email pretty soon. And please complete the post-event survey to give some of your feedback about today's event. You can give me 5 stars. I would appreciate that. I don't even know if I'm in the rankings. I'm just saying there. But it's been awesome to spend some time with you guys once again today, and really to get some people like Roger, Dr. Slovic, and Maya, not to mention student activists, as well as Herman Edwards, the head coach at ASU. I can't believe I just went formal and said Herman. Coach Edwards, of course. Once again, gathering, got some great leaders. Bill Walton, 4 p.m. Pacific time. Appreciate your support and your interest in driving the Pac-12 Team Green mission forward. So stay safe out there. Wash your hands, and hopefully next year we're having this conference and we're all in person hanging out together. So thanks again for the time, guys.
Thanks, Mike. Great job.
Thanks, Mike.
Absolutely. Loved it. Take care, brother.